Doyle Redland reporting. Dennis Fife, an Alhambra, California crazy man, held a press conference today to announce his intention to stand in the doorway of the office building at 2600 Kenilworth Avenue and yell at cars all day.
At approximately 9:30 a.m. on the day in question, shortly after I finish lunging at dogs, I will proceed to the front steps of the Simmons building and yell loudly for 9 hours. The screaming will be broken by a 15-minute fit of rigid catatonia, most likely in the late afternoon.
Among the topics Fife plans to address during his 9-hour rant, the ace of diamonds, bookshelves, the man trying to kill him, plastic bags in trees, Trapper John M.D., and papers everywhere. Doyle Redland for the Onion Radio News, online at theonion.com.
This is the Onion News Network.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
Welcome to Liberty Conspiracy on Free Talk Live. I'm Gardner Goldsmith.
Free Talk Live.
Of the Liberty Conspiracy, which streams every Monday through Friday live starting at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Rumble, Rockfin, and on my Twitter/X feed, that being at Guard Goldsmith. And every Sunday, you'll receive the Sunday News Assembly. At least 20 stories pertaining to individual liberty, plus expanded contextual information that helps draw out long-lasting lessons that can help us expand the purview and the number of people who believe in freedom. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Let's get started. But let's find out what's in store, everybody, tonight on the program. The news flash, it's from D.C., from New Hampshire to D.C. to you. And no down in D.C. I know. You were expecting great things, weren't you? I know. You and I, peas in a pod. Must be our mRNA. I'm sorry. Must be our DNA. We must share DNA. That's what it is, right? We got injected with that gullibility thing. I think that's what I hear now. EcoHealth Alliance is working on a new serum. It's called gullibility. Make sure you take it. It'll work on anything. It's a new gullibility shot. It works against gullibility 2019. Sorry. Covability 2019. And you just get your 8th shot of gullibility, and the next one will definitely work. I always love it. It reminds me of those self-help books. You know, those books that we used to, when I worked at the bookstore, we had this whole section of self-help stuff. And they were almost always the in New York. I don't know what the deal is with that, but I can't really tell you too much about it. It's just bizarre. But there are some anecdotal stories that we'll discuss. Just me talking to you, won't break it down by reading the articles, things like that. A couple things that I can give to you from New Hampshire, going down to Washington, D.C., straight to you. So we'll do that. And then after we go from that news flash, we'll talk about the German farm and energy protests as they widen. And we're not talking about Biden, but in a way, we will widen it to talk about Biden. And hopefully I won't be rhyming that clunkily throughout the rest of the program. But we are going to talk about the German farm and energy protests getting larger. Protesters in Poland now joining the German farmers. And the reaction to one politician as he came out to say hi. Yeah, I think you can guess how well that turned out. Then we're going to be discussing our second major issue, the U.S. climate cultists. That's where we widen it into Biden. And how they keep on chanting. Yes, their ritualism continues, and they keep taking your money. You're the one being sacrificed for their climate god. Welcome to the Aztec pyramid, my friends. Then, talking about sacrifices, we'll talk about the man who loves to sacrifice dogs and us on his altar of technology and scientism, Anthony Fauci, and who earned, $400,000 a year for many years doing it, and now we get to pay his retirement. Yes, the liar extraordinaire testified, and strangely couldn't recall, or at least said that he couldn't recall, 100 plus times today down in D.C. I know. You were expecting great things, weren't you? I know. You and I, peas in a pod. Must be our mRNA. I'm sorry. Must be our DNA. We must share DNA. That's what it is, right? We got injected with that gullibility thing. I think that's what I hear now. EcoHealth Alliance is working on a new serum. It's called Gullibility. Make sure you take it. It'll work on anything. It's a new gullibility shot. It works against gullibility 2019. Covability 2019. And you just get your 8th shot of gullibility, and the next one will definitely work. I always love it. It reminds me of those self-help books. You know, those books that we used to, when I worked at the bookstore, we had this whole section of self-help stuff. And they were almost always the same. It was, it was like, the break the such and such cycle, break the such and such, do this, do that, improve your life, blah, 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 And so I just thought it would be really funny to have a series of books called Break the Self-Help Book Cycle. How You Can Do It, Volume 1. And there's nothing actually in Volume 1. You got to get Volume 2. Because the people were addicted to the self-help books. They just kept buying the self-help books. It's like, I'll tell you what, I'll write a book about how to break buying the self-help book cycle. I'll break that habit for you. Just make sure you buy the next book. It's in that one. Yeah, in fact, we'll talk a little bit about what the AARP is recommending on number 4. Yeah, I think you can guess if you hadn't already seen it. Yes, they are recommending more jabs. Okay, and then we'll talk about the jabs that the courts are and governments are giving us regarding gun rights. So welcome to the program, everybody. It's great to have you here on this 9th day of January, and I really appreciate you being here. I see that Andrew is there, Max B is there, Harry Hart is there, Taylor Saunders is there, and they are in Rockfinville. Don't go back to Rockville. Yeah, I wasn't a fan of that REM song. Not a fan of a lot of REM songs. Possum King. Oh, man, I'm so glad you're there. This is cool. And, yeah, we got a couple minutes late start because Rumble recycled on me as I was putting the streaming codes in, and I had to go back through it. So you probably see this, like the picture of Darren McGavin's Kolchak close-up on Darren McGavin, just because I wasn't able to input the proper picture. It was all in, and then I had to redo it. So, Possum King, thanks for being there. Spread the word if you're watching, folks. Really appreciate it. He says, I hope the German protests erupt everywhere, especially here. Wouldn't that be awesome? Yeah, we'll show you a little little memory going back to the Canadian trucker protests and something that happened just over the past 24 hours to a pretty well-known Canadian reporter, and it's not good, of course. It's the government. What do you expect? They're doing it to somebody, and he's a reporter who has reported very fairly for the viewers and very fairly for truth, but government don't like that up in Canada, I guess. That's right. So, everybody, thanks for joining us. Remember, if you get the opportunity, go to my Substack, and every Sunday you'll find the Sunday News Assembly. A couple of those stories, I haven't even gotten a touch yet about Nikki Haley and the dumb things that she's had to say, but maybe we'll be able to get into some of those. I've got a couple stories that I wanted to touch last night regarding the jab dangers, some of those Southern Hemisphere studies, and the extrapolation, the very logical extrapolation people have done on the correlations on deaths that now show that it very clearly seems to be a connected ratio of the number of jabs that you get, and the worse your immune system becomes, and the more likely you are of having problems. They seem to be very, very well connected. So the more jabs you get, the lower your protection, and the worse your body goes, the worse your body becomes as you acquire an autoimmune system. And at the same time, many people can't fight outside immune challenges. It's not a good situation. That is probably one of the worst possible things you could ever have. Your immune system attacking your own body, but at the same time, having a lower capacity to fight foreign viruses, or maybe viruses, created by people with our tax money. Oh, yes, indeed. One and all. You got to love it. So let's get right to it, everybody. Let's talk about what's first up as we hit, you know what?
You're 6 minutes away from a live episode of Free Talk Live. Listen live at freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. It's talk radio that you control. And 603-283-6160 is the phone number here. That's 603-283-6160. You can call in with whatever is on your mind. And with you in the studio tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Jay Noon.
And me, Mark, remotely from Honduras.
Oh, I wondered if you were in Honduras or if you were in somewhere else. It looks like we already have a caller on the line. Tim from Florida. What's on your mind, Tim?
Well, this is not what I'm calling about, but I just want to offer an apology to you, Bonnie. And then regarding Javier Milei.
Well, thank you, Tim.
I know. I'm sorry. Well, Javier Milei, he met at some point, he converted to Judaism, and he met with a pro-genocide rabbi involved in the, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Chabad Lubavitch organization, and people can look more into that. You know, I think this guy is really a wolf in sheep's clothing. And
Who, Javier Milei or the rabbi?
The Milei.
Okay.
I don't know anything about this rabbi. It's kind of hard to make really a judgment based on what you're telling me, but there are plenty of reasons to think that a politician who won presidency could possibly be a wolf in sheep's clothing. And
most of them are.
I don't blame you at all. Like I don't understand the type of libertarian that gets personally offended because their hero is now Javier Milei.
So yeah, the speech that he had done, was certainly seemed like he's very pro freedom and pro free market and anti parasite class, but he could just be lying and pandering. Go on,
I know it's just words, but they were really good words. I wanted to talk about it all day yesterday.
And that's how I generally felt about Ron Paul too. Not that he had the level of power that Javier Milei had. I guess I celebrate that a guy that says the things that Javier Milei says has reached status in what I don't think we could call anything but a first world nation. And I think it's delightful. I don't know, like the Israeli Palestinian thing, I find to be a very confusing situation. Like I can hear people make arguments on both sides, and both of those both sides of those arguments make sense to me. But none of these people are Jesus on earth to me.
Yeah.
Well, there's different flavors of Zionism, and I don't want to say that all Zionism is necessarily bad. Actually, I wanted to discuss this when you were bringing up the I don't know what you call that place, the Zeti that you had lived in, and I wanted to bring up the millet system under the Ottoman Empire. And there was a time when the Ottoman Empire occupied what is now known as Israel/Palestine. And there were Jews there going all the way back to the expulsion, to the destruction of the temple under the Romans. And not all of them left. And so under each occupation, there were Jews, there were, and then later there were Muslims and there were Christians, and they all kind of lived there under different empires. Now, the millet system was actually where the Ottoman Empire, after they had conquered all these regions, they allowed people, much like the Roman Empire and also the Persians, they allowed people to kind of govern themselves. And so they allowed the Jews have their own government, the Christians have their own government, and Muslims have their own government. And a lot of people apparently converted to Islam to get out of paying taxes.
Interesting.
Yeah. As I understood it, that was one of the reasons for doing it, is you just got a lower tax bill. And, I can't say that I wouldn't be interested in the religion du jour that would give me a lower tax bill, too.
It's also something that Constantine did in the Roman Empire. He wanted people to become Christians, and he would lower they would be exempt from certain tax type things. So I guess that's a strategy.
I literally know of 10 different farmers in New York State that converted to Amish. Quite literally to not pay taxes. So the Amish actually have a lobby where they're exempt from income tax.
Yep.
And Also,
it's certainly exempt from Social Security. I don't know precisely on income.
Definitely exempt from income tax, all that kind of stuff. So, like, if you're an Amish guy and you go to work for Walmart in upstate New York, and you tell them that you're old order Amish and you don't have a Social Security number, they write old order Amish where the Social Security number goes, and they don't take out any of the taxes. I've heard this from multiple Amish folks, and also when it comes to property taxes, New York has a thing called the STAR program, which is for two classifications of people: Amish and senior citizens, so over 65 years of age. And basically, the STAR program is you don't pay the whole portion or all of the school tax that's related to your property extortion. So, like here in New Hampshire, I just talked to a guy the other day who lives down the road from me. He has a $25,000 a year property tax bill, Hopkinton, New Hampshire. And I went to his house. It wasn't spectacular. It's nicer than my place.
Why is it so high?
It's Hopkinton.
That's just where it is.
This guy's like, he's like, oh yeah, I moved here for the Free State Project, but I bought a house in the wrong town. And he was like, he was kind of like,
that's crazy. Like Keene isn't even that bad. That's like 5 times what we pay for multiple properties.
Yeah, and his neighbor pays like $28,000, and another neighbor's got like a little rinky shack, and he's paying like $14,000. Technically, he was telling me it's the highest property tax in New Hampshire.
Terrible research before he moved.
Right. He moved out of New York City. He had he owned a condo in like on Fifth Avenue or something that was a very high end, very expensive, that had very much expensive property taxes too. But he's like, yeah, 80% of his property tax goes towards the school. Is because this guy's like irate. He's doing a bunch of research, and like 80% of that school tax quite literally goes towards funding the pension of the school administrators.
So with Israel, Tim, what you're trying to say, I don't know really what you're trying to get to. Were you trying to say, oh, well, people could have lived there peacefully together, or what were you trying to say about Israel?
Well, yeah. So there were private individuals from Europe, and this actually goes back. Let me come back to answer your question and just state the fact that I always thought that to be a Jew, that it was some kind of like race or genetics, and maybe at one time it was from the 12 tribes, but over time people converted. But in the end, to answer, what was your question again?
So if you want to hold, I'm just going to put you on hold. It's Free Talk Live, and 603-283-6160 is the number for you to get in on the conversation with us. Bring up whatever you want. It's Free Talk Live. More coming up.
It's The Onion Radio News. The nation's last remaining themeless restaurant has closed. This is Doyle Redland reporting. A once vibrant era came to an end today when Pat's Place, the nation's last themeless restaurant, closed its doors in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. During the heyday of themeless restaurants, Pat's Place achieved a certain amount of notoriety for its unique non-themed food items and unadorned atmosphere. But according to owner Patrick Baines, the times have changed.
Lately, we've had only a handful of people coming in to gawk at our posterless walls and mundanely named menu items like hamburgers or pancakes, and then they go someplace like the Rainforest Cafe or Johnny Rockets to actually eat.
Plans are now in the works to convert the Pat's Place location into Cedar Rapids' 7th Patty-O Touchdown Sports Bar and Good Time Internet Grill. Doyle Redland for The Onion Radio News, online at theonion.com.
This is The Onion News Network.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. Children's lives could have been saved if law enforcement officers had acted sooner when a gunman opened fire at an elementary school in Texas, according to a U.S. Justice Department investigation. The report details the, quote, critical failures in the delayed police response to a school shooting in the town of Uvalde. 19 students and 2 teachers were killed in May 2022. U.S. correspondent Sally Patterson has more.
For almost 2 years, the families of those killed in Uvalde, Texas, have been waiting for answers. Why did it take police so long to stop the school shooter in May 2022? The Justice Department's nearly 600-page report found a plethora of failures that led to the mass shooting, from poor communication and leadership to inadequate training. According to education news outlet K-12 Dive, there were more than 340 school shootings in 2023. That's almost 50 more than the year before. Gun control is one of the most divisive issues in the United States and could shape the outcome of this year's presidential election.
Donald Trump has continued his spat with a judge presiding over his defamation case. On Wednesday, the former president was threatened to be kicked out of court after being accused of being disruptive during the testimony of his accuser, E. Jean Carroll. The writer's back on the witness stand today for further cross-examination. William Denslow reports from New York.
In a series of social media posts, Donald Trump said the civil case brought against him by E. Jean Carroll is made up, just like the other trials he faces. The comments came after he was reprimanded by Judge Lewis Kaplan on Wednesday for making disruptive comments during Carroll's testimony. Last year, the former president was found liable for sexually abusing and defaming the writer. This case, currently underway in New York, is purely focused on whether Trump owes her further damages.
The US mission to the moon is coming to an end today, but not with the expected triumphant landing on the lunar surface. A failure on board means the team is directing the Peregrine spacecraft back home to burn up in the Earth's atmosphere. US correspondent Nick Harper reports.
The joint public-private venture, which took off on January 8th, had hoped to return the US to the moon's surface for the first time in more than half a century. However, a major propellant leak detected shortly after takeoff from Cape Canaveral meant a moon landing was no longer possible. Instead, the team chose to dispose of the craft rather than letting it fly through space, posing a hazard to satellites and other spacecraft. The Peregrine lander was aiming to explore the lunar surface to gather data ahead of planned missions to once again send humans to the moon in the coming years.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
You control 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. That's the phone number you can call to bring up whatever is on your mind. It's Free Talk Live, and with you in the studio tonight, you've got me, Bonnie,
and Jay Noon,
and Mark Edge remotely.
Sorry, Mark. And I wanted to tell you that Free
How's
Talk.
my audio?
It's good. It's good. I just talked over you for some reason. I don't know why. Okay. Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project with a decentralized autonomous organization that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month for this sponsorship. It's easy to get and use Dash. You can learn more at dash.org. That's dash.org. And before we went to break, we had Tim from Florida on the line. Tim, I just wanted to let you finish what you were saying. You had a point you wanted to make about Israel?
Yeah. I was saying that not all Zionism is necessarily bad, but then there's something that I would call political Zionism, which is what we're currently seeing, with all the repercussions in Gaza. But what I wanted to say was a lot of Greeks at one point converted to Judaism and Christianity, and it was kind of a grab bag. And then eventually something called the Khazars, which I think Dave from New Mexico has talked about, the Khazarian Mafia and all that. But basically, you have the Slavs in Europe, a large portion of which were Jews that got driven out into Germany. And then so later, like in the mid 1800s, they were living in Germany and they were talking about, we need to have our own homeland. And then other Jews were like, no, that's against prophecy. And so there was a big debate, and the ones that were into it, eventually it did become the state of Israel. But the way it started was actually voluntarily private individuals from Europe, they would buy public land from the Ottoman Empire. and that's how they got a foothold there to begin with. So it actually started back in the 1850s, long before people think 1947 was the beginning, but that was just the Balfour Declaration. But up until that point,
but that was probably the beginning of the state, right? So 1947 is the beginning of the state, but before that was just voluntary movement, and that sounds like the way it should have continued to go. It's like,
right.
Well, one of the things that I think about this is that I'm not generally terribly happy with the rulers of any particular country.
mm-hmm.
Like, there's no country where I'm like, oh boy, I like those guys. So, you know, I think Israel's unique in so much as it's an ethno-state. Not to say that China isn't. There's, you know, more than one ethno-state out there. But I guess it doesn't really matter when, like, who legitimately is Israel, right? Like, Israel, there's Islamic Israeli citizens. There's Jewish Israeli citizens.
That wants to be a Jew. Anybody that wants to be a Jew and can convert and move to Israel can get land.
But the point I'm trying to make is there are Muslim Israelis.
And
There's
Christian.
lots of them. And they're having lots of kids, mind you. So they're becoming a larger and larger voting bloc all the time.
Well, thank you for the call, Tim.
Israel is also an American welfare state.
Yeah.
They get like $15 billion a year was like one of the last numbers I've heard in, you know, foreign aid from the United States.
And that's the thing about it. It's like, I just don't like that it's a state. It's like, it's nothing against any kind of people. It's the one country that if you talk bad about the state, even some libertarians get butthurt because they think you're just talking about the people. And it's like, most likely those people there aren't even like your people. Like, I thought I was a Jew most of my life. And guess what? I'm just a Ukrainian whose ancestors probably converted to a Jew. Like, it's like none of my family are in Israel right now just because most of my life I thought I was a Jew.
And I think that, like, I 100% agree. It, you know, just because you disagree with the policies of the state of Israel does not make you anti-Semitic. And anybody who says that is taking a shortcut to winning the argument and is not into being intellectually honest. Mm-hmm. It's just it's a big fat lie is all that is. Yeah. However, you know, like, I can totally see if there was a group of people that lived nearby to my house that were shooting missiles over a wall trying to harm me and my family, if they kidnapped a family member, if they did a variety of things, I would be pretty darned angry. And I would also not have a single problem with using violence against those people. And this is where we get into a difficult.
Their neighbors and their family members who weren't involved in the entire neighborhood the one person lived in, and that's more like what we're talking about. Then
I know, but this is a war, and wars are ugly,
and that's not an excuse. That's what me and Richie Rich, me and someone recently, and I can't remember who now. We're talking about people always say, "Well, that's war. That's an excuse."
Well, it may be to other people. It isn't to me. Here's what I would do in the circumstances if over and over for generations, people were willing to die in order to take my land from me. I would move. I'd sell it and I'd leave. But now we're getting to the point where, you know, I sort of go back into history and say, if only the United States, if only the Roosevelt FDR administration, if only Americans at the time hadn't been such bigots,
right?
If they had just taken, and this is, and I'll take this and I'll apply it to today. But if the United States had simply said, every Jew that feels like they're in danger in Europe in 1938 or whatever, you're welcome to, you know, give us your poor, give us your, you know, weary, give us your unwashed masses. Come on to the United States. And right now, we would be the seat of technological innovation.
I was about to say that instead of Israel. Like, all the numbers tell us that those people have one of the highest IQs and should be doing nothing but being productive people. I just don't understand it. I don't understand why. Somebody told me that the hate for Jews had to do with a large group of Jews started banks in Europe, and that's why the Europeans hated the Jews so much. But it's like, why did the Americans hate them? It's like, I don't know. You love central banks too.
people have hated the Jews for hundreds of years. There's always these pogroms. There's always things going on. And basically it comes down to they're different than us. And I don't know what's going on over there. And they're exclusive. This is another thing, is Jews tend to be exclusive. They want their kids to marry Jews, just like everybody else is in this world, except for Americans who are like, oh, that'd be racist to say something like that. But everybody else in the world says, why don't you marry somebody like us? And so they try to, pressure their kids into that sort of thing. So, there's always going to be tensions between different cultures. And I don't see a particular reason for it, but that's just what happens. So I want to apply this today. Currently, the United States, what I'm hearing in the U.S. is that people believe that the United States is going to go to war with China over Taiwan. Now, before this happens, why not issue a blanket statement that says anybody in Taiwan that feels like they're in danger and that they want a place to be, why don't you come over to the United States? As a matter of fact, let's move that silicon production factory here to the United States. We'll give you citizenship and you can work here. But, for whatever reason, that idea doesn't seem to be selling.
Well,
but I think we take productive, intelligent people and bring them to the U.S. We should do it over and over.
The current administration, the establishment, that the deep state doesn't want, good, hardworking, skilled, people coming here to this country. They want career welfare recipients coming to this country. They want people coming here with an ideology that, I'll just go there and get paid. And then, there's a lot of horrible things going on in the UK and England with just gangs of, these African migrants just beating, the single white dude up. And
I heard about this in Ireland. There was a bunch of women that were stabbed just a few months ago.
Yep.
And
by an Albanian refugee.
Albanian,
or was it? I'm sorry, Nigerian refugee. Maybe
yeah,
I could have had that wrong.
It's just there are definitely ways to. I don't know. I just think that levels of consciousness could be measured, and I've talked about this before. And you could let people in who are not third world. Okay, do they hate dogs? Don't let them in. Third world. But it looks like we have a caller, Justin in New Hampshire. Justin, what's on your mind?
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me on. I'm going to be a sheriff's candidate. I'm a 10-year law enforcement veteran, and I watched some of the testimony today from the public safety and law enforcement hearing, and I want to talk about that. I want to talk about
New Hampshire?
Yeah, New Hampshire. I'll be Carroll County.
Yeah, Justin, I was actually in the State House today. I testified on various bills. And I actually met a sheriff named William Wright from Belknap. And he was a pretty interesting fellow to talk to. Sounded like he was very much about the Constitution. He said as the elected official that he doesn't have any qualified immunity. He says when one of his guys does something wrong or bad, that he is held personally liable. And he testified against a bill that I'm trying to think of the representative's name who introduced the bill. Basically, it was a bill allowing a a sheriff to deputize basically anyone in a time of some kind of emergency.
Emergency powers.
Well, so after hearing this sheriff talk, he's like, well, we got to vet people. They have to have a they have to have a mental health screening. They have to have this, that, and the other thing. He was basically saying about when it comes to people. And then he started talking about the liability. But, I was thinking, well, what if a sheriff got into power and all of a sudden there's an emergency and he's got essentially, a bunch of BLM Antifa types, that are, all set and ready to be deputized. Was kind of my thought on that particular thing. But
doesn't seem likely in New Hampshire.
Right. It doesn't seem likely in New Hampshire that any of this, terrorist groups like BLM or Antifa would really get anywhere because almost everyone, a very large percent of the people in New Hampshire are just carrying. So New Hampshire is the kind of state where you're not going to really get away with very, very inappropriate behavior such as violence before somebody draws on you.
Also, one of these this whole deputization thing is valuable in so much as people like Derek J., who's the former co-host here on Free Talk Live, Ian Freeman, who's one of the founding co-hosts here on Free Talk Live, have been denied just out of hand by the sheriffs and law enforcement in their particular counties for carrying firearms.
I
They
believe
just
it was
couldn't do it.
the chief of police that denied them, not the actual sheriff.
Whatever
but they can't
the
do it
situation
now
is.
because it's a shall issue state now. It used to be a may issue state.
And it's
I
constitutional
don't know the
carry now.
specifics, but I can tell you that that the sheriff could deputize somebody, and that would override any of the legal ramifications. As I understand it, this is not legal advice, but if one gets deputized, that you can carry a gun no matter what your legal status.
So, Justin, which hearing did you go to the State House for?
I didn't actually travel to there, and if you folks give me a minute to run with this, I have a great plan that I actually wanted to implement before I even heard of this, and it ties in with taxes and exactly what you folks are talking about, where like I said, I'm a 10-year veteran of law enforcement. I did 7 years in Rochester, 3 years in Pittsfield. I have a lot of experience within that 10 years, and that's driven me to want to be a constitutional sheriff. Now, the retirement system is why I left, because it's not a viable retirement system, and that ties into kind of what we're talking about. We'll come back to that. But I saw the real need for constitutional sheriffs, and Mike Belcher is actually my rep here in Wakefield and put forth a couple of those things, and he's an awesome guy. I was with him campaigning last year, and he understands, where things are going and what's going to be needed. So before I even introduce this, one of the reasons I wanted to be a sheriff specifically is to enforce the Constitution, limit some of the federal stuff that he was talking about, because I don't think it's out of hand currently, but I'd like to prevent it, because thankfully we are a state that has a high firearms rate. We have a very low violent crime rate, and I'd like to keep that low. And part of that would be having a low-cost, quality auxiliary force where you do hold people to a standard. They're going to have to understand the Constitution. They're going to have to display competency with any of their weapon systems, the laws that will apply to anything that they would do, even in an emergency situation. And I understand the apprehension of having, I guess, executive powers, but it would be the type of thing where you will sign a document saying that you understand all of the things you need to do, and if you act outside of that, you will be held to a higher standard than the public. And if people are willing to do that and display competency, it's a great way to have a low-cost, high-yield type of situation, even if it's not Antifa. It could be flooding. It could be a really bad winter storm where it knocks the power out. It could be something that's outside of a Civil War situation, but can still provide a very low-cost benefit, where we also have a number of people in our communities that are vested and can learn and get education. It, in theory, should provide a better result for a lot less money.
Well, one thing I got to ask is, what's the difference between this and just armed citizens? We already have that.
Well, I'm in support of that anyways. I mean, I was happy to see that it's a constitutional carry state now. And yes, police chiefs, if they were vindictive before that was passed, if they didn't like you, whether it was right, wrong, or indifferent, they could deny you a pistol carry license, which I disagreed with. Throughout my career, I've been very thankful to work with very professional people, but you hear stories, you see things. I've seen many things in court where corruption exists, obviously. I'm sure that you folks are intelligent enough to know that and have seen it or heard stories.
Yep.
Been a
and
victim
that's
of
what
it.
ties me with this whole, he also introduced something that I helped him with to propose, is changing the language of resisting arrest to remove the fact that it doesn't have to be a lawful arrest or not. And that's one of the things that even early in my career, I'm very proud to grow up here, had a great life, was very, green, motivated, loved to be part of the law enforcement community. And when I started learning the law, I read that statute and was like, well, we shouldn't really be able to illegally arrest people. And ironically enough, one of the people that were testifying against that bill was a police chief, and he said the quiet part out loud. Because the reason I wanted to propose this is the fact that this type of charge is not always misused, and I won't even say it's mostly misused, but it's something that's used as leverage in the courts, where you can not commit a crime, then if you resist because you're obviously confident you didn't commit a crime,
yes,
then the Class A misdemeanor can be leveraged against you during prosecution.
This happened to our friend.
Couldn't even get to that level.
This happened to a person, caller, sometimes is a caller named Footloose. He got found not guilty, well, at least, not guilty, on all of his charges except the resisting arrest.
Yep.
So they basically admitted, so you weren't supposed to have gotten arrested. Well, you resisted arrest.
So
yeah, resisting arrest should be a lesser included charge, and it shouldn't be able to stick if the arrest itself isn't legitimate. I mean, it seems to me that should be written right into the statute.
Sounds like a great idea, yeah.
So and
it's the common sense type of situation where I have had many cases. I've never abused this ever because I've been very constitutionally focused. But even people in places I've worked, this gets used as a leverage charge, ties you up in court. Your average person, it's not a small thing to be arrested. We can't discount the impact that has. Going to court means you got to take time off from work and can have a financial impact to it, where a lot of the people that were testifying against this kind of threw the old, we need to make sure law enforcement's protected. We can't have more dangerous situations, which is nonsense. Okay, I've affected personally thousands of arrests because I worked in Rochester. I averaged 100 a year of my own and assisted on at least 100 to 200 of other people's. Like, I understand this. And these people are not putting the effort talking about bail reform, which puts more often dangerous people on the street 4, 5, 6 different times. That amplifies your level of danger when you have to rearrest them. They're not putting the effort into that, but they're concerned about potential, quote, vigilante justice on this bill. And ironically enough, one of the attorneys that spoke during this, I've had cases with, and they have no problem pleading cases down that actually are serious because they don't want to go to trial to minimal crimes. So if they're putting the effort into this, arguing for this, saying it's dangerous, in reality, this is just a check of power, where if you're going to arrest someone or detain them, which is a physical use of force, you're just making sure that the officer is informed at the time of this detention or arrest, and that they will not do it if they know it's not lawful, because they will not be able to charge you at any time.
I was in that committee room today. I testified for that bill. And part of now, you said you weren't in the committee. Did you watch the live stream?
Yeah, essentially someone sent it to me. I actually saw you in there and recognized your voice. I was listening to it at work.
Okay.
And that's what prompted me calling in tonight. So it kind of just worked out.
Yeah, nice. So earlier I went there to testify on a bill 1012. That's to basically change the existing child endangering the welfare of a child statute to make it include that there must be an injury or harm to the child in order to be charged with this, because this charge is basically just like the resisting arrest charge. And I testified that in 20 years ago, 2003, I got arrested for a couple different charges, but everything was dismissed pretty quickly, except for the charge of resisting arrest. And they kept going with that. And then there was actually surveillance footage of the arrest that it took me a long time to get. And in fact, I had to have a friend literally steal it, this footage, because the particular gas station was sort of being complicit and being like, oh, it doesn't exist. And I found a guy who worked for the gas station in a different place, and he's like, oh, I'll get that for you. And he got it. And anyways, it just showed me, just as soon as they said I was under arrest, I just put my hands behind my back and they put handcuffs on me. There was no resisting whatsoever. But there was about 25 minutes of me exerting my rights. Oh, if I give you that information or if I give you that document, are you going to use it against me? And the cop's like, yes, I'm conducting an investigation. So I said, okay, I'm going to exercise my constitutionally secured rights not to incriminate myself. I'm not giving you anything. I'm not telling you anything. And leave me alone. But anyways, getting back to Mike Belcher's bill, and the thing that I wanted to I stressed to the committee was this causes liability directly and indirectly for people. The direct liability is these people who are just getting arrested and they're getting for basically because they've just upset the cop, which happens a lot. Like, if these guys have if people have the ability of getting upset easily and easily being triggered, they should not be police officers. You should have to have the patience of an oyster to be a police officer, as far as I'm concerned. So
trust me, I've exercised it.
Yep. Well, I grew up training horses, so that's one thing I've really developed is my patience. So anyways, and then so the liability is now on this poor guy that's got this resisting arrest charge or child endangerment charge, which it's like very vague, the definition of these statutes, and they just use this when they got nothing else to use against you. And also the indirect liability to the taxpayers is when you basically arrested and charged for these statutes that are essentially unconstitutional because there is no injury or harm to anybody. No one's legal rights are been violated. When you get to the actual judicial court, Superior Court, Circuit Court are not part of judiciary. They are legislative tribunals. But when you get to the Supreme Court throws this stuff out if there's no victim, if there's no one's rights have been injured. And then you have a massive tort claim against the police and the state, and that cost the taxpayers millions of dollars.
603-283-6160. More is coming up. It's Free Talk Live. You can call in with whatever is on your mind. Don't go anywhere.
Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here, and I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. Children's lives could have been saved if law enforcement officers had acted sooner when a gunman opened fire at an elementary school in Texas, according to a U.S. Justice Department investigation. The report details the, quote, critical failures in the delayed police response to a school shooting in the town of Uvalde. 19 students and 2 teachers were killed in May 2022. US correspondent Sally Patterson has more.
For almost 2 years, the families of those killed in Uvalde, Texas, have been waiting for answers. Why did it take police so long to stop the school shooter in May 2022? The Justice Department's nearly 600-page report found a plethora of failures that led to the mass shooting, from poor communication and leadership to inadequate training. According to education news outlet K-12 Dive, there were more than 340 school shootings in 2023. That's almost 50 more than the year before. Gun control is one of the most divisive issues in the United States and could shape the outcome of this year's presidential election.
Donald Trump has continued his spat with a judge presiding over his defamation case. On Wednesday, the former president was threatened to be kicked out of court after being accused of being disruptive during the testimony of his accuser, E. Jean Carroll. The writer's back on the witness stand today for further cross-examination. William Denslow reports from New York.
In a series of social media posts, Donald Trump said the civil case brought against him by E. Jean Carroll is made up, just like the other trials he faces. The comments came after he was reprimanded by Judge Lewis Kaplan on Wednesday for making disruptive comments during Carroll's testimony. Last year, the former president was found liable for sexually abusing and defaming the writer. This case, currently underway in New York, is purely focused on whether Trump owes her further damages.
The US mission to the moon is coming to an end today, but not with the expected triumphant landing on the lunar surface. A failure on board means the team is directing the Peregrine spacecraft back home to burn up in the Earth's atmosphere. US correspondent Nick Harper reports.
The joint public-private venture, which took off on January the 8th, had hoped to return the US to the moon's surface for the first time in more than half a century. However, a major propellant leak detected shortly after takeoff from Cape Canaveral meant a moon landing was no longer possible. Instead, the team chose to dispose of the craft rather than letting it fly through space, posing a hazard to satellites and other spacecraft. The Peregrine lander was aiming to explore the lunar surface to gather data ahead of planned missions to once again send humans to the moon in the coming years.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. Lawmakers in the United States are racing against the clock to avert a partial government shutdown, with just a day left until funding runs dry. Both chambers of Congress, the House of Representatives and the Senate, must pass a short-term extension by the end of Friday. But recent history shows that consensus can be hard to come by on Capitol Hill. From Washington, Benji Hire reports.
On the line, a shutdown that would halt funding for key government agencies, transportation, housing, energy. A stopgap bill last November kept the coffers open over the new year. Now lawmakers will have to agree to extend to push those impending shutdown deadlines to March, when the nation will likely reach this precipice again.
Authorities in the United States will return $8.9 million recovered from the state of New Jersey to Nigeria. The money was looted by Nigerian government officials to acquire property in 2014. Ajak Mangut reports.
According to New Jersey Royal Court documents, the property was acquired with stolen funds from Nigeria by high-ranking officials within certain departments of the Nigerian government in 2014. The court, on January 12th, granted the state attorney general's request for the forfeiture of the property deposited in a Jersey bank account by Nigerian companies. The U.S. court said the diverted funds were meant for procurement of arms for Nigerian forces to combat Boko Haram terrorists. The funds were, however, diverted through foreign bank accounts to family members of the former ruling People's Democratic Party during the 2015 general elections. The recovery followed a forfeiture notice filed in New Jersey State's Royal Court under the state's relatively new 2018 law governing civil forfeiture of assets. This was done in partnership with the New Jersey Attorney General and the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Ajak Mangut, Abuja.
And that's the latest feature story news. Kate Fisher reporting.
Florida officials announced today its plan to experiment with new 600-lever voting machines.
The machine operates through a very straightforward process that we think is going to give Floridians the peace of mind that their votes will be counted. The voter turns on the machine using these 30 levers at the top and then enters their names and social security numbers using the alphanumeric levers near the bottom here. Right about now, the voter's going to have to find the two levers on the machine that are exactly identical and pull them at the same time. Then they're going to have to...
The new 22-foot tall steam-powered machines, which officials are hailing as, quote, the future of voting, each feature over 45 separate panels of levers, along with an intricate series of valves, knobs, cranks, and pumps, all designed to streamline the electoral process.
Now, some of this may seem confusing, but every voter will be given a comprehensive 2,200-page manual when they enter their precinct that will explain exactly what to do.
This is the Onion News Network.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live. It's talk radio that you control. And 603-283-6160 is the phone number. That's 603-283-6160. And I would like to thank Steve Reddle, who is a gold level amplifier with us here at Free Talk Live. An amplifier is someone who helps to advertise, market, promote, and support Free Talk Live. That means that Steve Reddle went to amps.freetalklive.com. That's amps.freetalklive.com. And that means that he is donating monetarily to Free Talk Live to keep us on the air and is on as many stations as we could possibly get on. And I would just like to thank you so much, Steve. We all thank you here at Free Talk Live. And we appreciate all of our amplifiers. That's amps.freetalklive.com if you'd like to learn more. And thank you, Steve. In the studio with you tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Jay Noon.
And Mark Edge.
And we did have a caller on the line in the last segment. I'm going to bring Justin in New Hampshire back on. Justin, in the last segment you were talking about, you said that you have, I think you said 2 decades of experience as a law enforcement officer.
No, I have 1. So 10 years, 2012 to 2022.
Nice. So you were saying that one thing that you really support that's a bill in New Hampshire right now from a Belknap representative is making it to where if somebody gets arrested for disorderly conduct, or not disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, then it will need to have been a lawful arrest. Basically, cops will be incentivized to not just arrest people when they're upset, not just arrest somebody when they want a reason to arrest them, but to instead have an actual reason for a lawful arrest before they arrest someone, or else they won't win in court. Is that correct?
Mostly correct. So it's actually Carroll County Representative Mike Belcher that submitted the bill.
Oh, okay.
And the rest of it is correct. So, it's basically just talking about resisting arrest, and it's not so much that, thankfully, I haven't seen this abused. I know it exists. I know people probably have stories where it has happened to them, but it's essentially just checking that if you are going to arrest for resisting arrest or detention, there has to be a lawful reason, and it wouldn't so much get thrown out in the court because it already pretty much does. It would be the fact that they would probably be open to liability personally for that, and charges wouldn't even be able to be done in the first place.
In my opinion, it's weird to me that so many people stood up apparently at the hearing and said, oh, we can't have this bill go through because it will make things unsafe for police officers. It just seems to me, in my opinion, that it would make things safer for police officers because if you don't start arresting someone unlawfully, well, they're less likely to punch you in the face or something, Yeah,
and that's accurate. So in my career, when I got out, it was a situation where the training standard has dropped. It's dropped significantly because of the war on police, and a lot of that stuff is false. But the public perception of it is that less people want to do it because of the retirement system not being really quality retirement system. People that are planning their financial future that still want to do it aren't doing it. Back in 2012, I kind of felt the same way. I really wanted the opportunity, so I just did it anyways, knowing that I could pull at least my money out. And that was my situation is not good for everybody. But part of my sheriff run this year is actually going to be talking about a lot of this stuff. I did it last year. I lost in a Republican primary. I don't know if I'll run Republican or Libertarian this time. I have till June to decide. But I want to get this out there because the retirement benefit's not really good for the employee because they can change it as it goes. And there's a lot of issues I can't really get into as far as that specifically. But one of the things that no one talks about is that 2 years ago, I believe, and I'm paraphrasing, the contribution for a state retirement group 2, which is what law is, was raised. So it was, I started 11% of my pay, every pay period, went into my retirement that you have to do. You do not have an option. You have to opt into this. The city or town's contribution was 22%. That went up to 30% a couple years ago arbitrarily, and not a town or city made a peep that I'm aware of. And that's the type of stuff that as taxpayers, I'm pro-police, I'm pro-first responders, obviously. I'm trying to make that culture better, but it has to be a reasonable cost. And cost per employee, part of the reason that we have stagnation in people wanting to be first responders of any kind is wage stagnation, which is kept low because the cost for the town per employee is so high.
So one thing I would say to you, if you want to run as a sheriff, I don't remember which county you said, but is to go to, do you know what the Free State Project is?
Yeah, I've been following that. I mean, I try and keep up as much as I can all around. And a lot of that stuff I support. I mean, I think that instead of, I'm, I guess, Republican, but I kind of lend more libertarian now because the Overton window has shifted. I don't know how I'll strategize that, but I'm going to be in Carroll County. And part of the reason I moved up here and want to run up here is that you have a bunch of conservative, like-minded people where I know that we're branded as radical or extreme, but apparently just wanting to be left alone and having low taxes is extreme behavior now.
Well, I was just going to suggest to you that you maybe start going to Free Stater meetups because, I mean, from your point of view, it's great that you were a cop for 10 years and you didn't abuse your powers or anything. From my point of view, it's absolutely insane to think that someone out there believes that this doesn't get abused a lot. Like, all of my friends who have been arrested, I would say 95% of them just get slapped on a disorderly conduct for no reason. Or that too, but also resisting arrest a lot of times. It's so abused. I just think that maybe you need to look at the other side of this. And libertarians in New Hampshire are the number one most abused group by cops, not anyone else who claims to be. It's so funny that other people act like they are, and no one in this entire universe knows more people than me have been abused by cops, it seems like, yet somebody will come up to me talking like I can't know what I'm talking about police abuse. All I'm trying to say is that it sounds like you have a lot of very similar ideals to the Free Staters and the Libertarians. I do think running as a Libertarian is more if you want to do activism for the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, and that it would be best to run as a Republican, even if you do feel personally Libertarian. That's just the advice I would give as just a person who listens to, has my ear to the grapevine. That's basically it. The other thing I would suggest is maybe trying to look at the other side of the situation, because it seems like you're almost there, but you don't. I can't see that you have all of reality in your view. Do you see what I mean?
I guess I don't understand what you're saying as far as like the reality of what exactly.
Critique him a little bit on where you think he's not following.
We love you so much, Joe.
Hip straight.
Joe, we're never gonna up on you, bro.
So that was somebody from the chat. I don't even know how that happened. Sorry, that was not me. So what I was going to say was that basically it seems to me that this gets abused a lot. I think that if you want people to vote for you, you should be more down to earth and not just, cops don't really abuse this. Yeah, they do. They do it a lot.
That's actually not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that. So I'm glad that this is what I like, is that I don't want people to just agree with me. If you don't understand what I'm saying, I want to be able to articulate it. So I don't think it's not abused. I'm saying where my personal experience with the people I worked with, I didn't see it abused.
Okay.
I know it's widely abused. That's why I brought it up.
All right.
So,
I mean, I worked with I don't care about credit or anything, but I was the one who approached Mike and wanted him to support this. So.
Nice.
Okay, yeah, he mentioned
really good bill.
He mentioned in his testimony about it that he was approached by law enforcement. And anyways, Justin, do you have like any social media that you could that you use, or a way that people could follow you that you want to let listeners know about?
Oh, absolutely. So I have to get some content on Rumble and whatnot, so I can have more video content to be more informational. But I'm still on Facebook, Worthley for Carroll County Sheriff. I have a Telegram channel, Worthley for Carroll County Sheriff, and then I'm on Instagram as well, Worthley for CC Sheriff NH. So I have to work. I'm a working stiff like everybody else. I just have the experience to do it. Seem to be the only one who's interested in doing it. And it's $10 to run. And if people get behind me, then you can have a constitutional insurance policy in Carroll County anyways.
Nice. I appreciate your running. Another fella who's going to be running for sheriff also is Jason Gerhard. He's going to be running on Merrimack County. And
that's definitely needed. It'll be tough there, working there for a couple of years. But I've already seen the craziness of them calling him a felon and all this other stuff. So, I mean, when you're getting the flack, you're over the target.
Well, so another thing I'd hope to include in show notes tonight and bring up right now is there is a notice, a people's notice that was created by essentially the David Jose folks. Are you familiar with David Jose and Chris Noyes, possibly?
Chris Noyes a little bit. No, the other person, no.
So David Jose is kind of the guy who taught Chris Noyes about the affidavit and notice process. Giving notice to the trust servants, because all the public servants are. They are fiduciary to a trust, and a trust is the Constitution. And if you heard my testimony today in the House Bill 1012, I started off with, I am one of the people. You guys are fiduciaries. You have a fiduciary responsibility. Being the state representatives. And anyways, there's a JOP form. Jason Gerhard got arrested for recording in the federal court building. And there is a notice that anyone can fill out and basically do this online JOP forms, with an electric e-signature, and it will get emailed to the clerk of courts at the federal court. It'll get, Jason, I believe, will get a copy of the email, and this will be putting all these government employees on notice. And I would encourage you, Justin, to check out some of this stuff here about these notices. You will probably start, I guarantee as soon as you become sheriff, you're going to be receiving these notices. In fact, I've been collecting business cards from every law enforcement officer I meet, including the two that testified today. I got their contact information because I'm adding them to the notice list so they can be notified of, what their duty is, what their fiduciary responsibility is. But anyways, I'm glad to hear you're running. That's great. And even if guys like you and Gerhard, don't get elected, the fact that you run and put this word out there and get people, interested, get people's attention is very, very much worth it.
And thank you for bringing that up, because I wasn't actually thinking about that. But this was not something that I really ever even set out to do. This is more of a necessity thing, and I know a lot of people say that. But the one thing I will say to anybody who's on the fence out there, because all of us have to fix it. Okay, there's no president that's going to fix it. There's no even state reps to a lot of points are going to fix it. It's going to be local control, essentially. I know they get thrown around a lot, but when you restore that locally and we get involved, we will win. So I may not win again. I hope I do. If people actually understand what I'm about, I probably will. But at the same time, even if you don't, I never worked in this county, and it was a sheriff that was here for 8 years, and me just putting signs up and connecting with people, which is rewarding in itself, shook the establishment, I guess. I don't want to overstate it. But at the same time, I'm a nobody. I'm just like everybody else. You know, have I had a great career that I'm proud of? Yes. But I'm just a normal person like everyone that's listening to this. So you can go do the same thing. It's really not expensive at the county level. It's $10, and you can do it. If you care about humanity and you care about your neighbors and don't want to pay taxes and host a bunch of free people in your house, you might want to get involved.
Yeah, actually, I ran for state rep last time around as a Republican. And in fact, if I can run for state rep, and I say if I can because, you know, my wife really doesn't want me to. But if I do again, I'm in a college town, so I'm going to run as a Democrat. And I'm going to basically just go essentially work the college and talk to the college kids. And there's a lot of, things I can identify with these, inner city college kids, especially when it comes to, the situation with DCYF, because they all have, horrible experiences with DCYF. Most of the kids at New England College, come from like New York City, Hartford, Boston, Baltimore and stuff. So everybody in the inner city knows someone who's been terrified and harassed by, Child Protective Service industrial complex. And because one of the things I'd like to do is abolish that organization. It's a horror show. And
I'm 100% with you, and it would save a lot of money.
Yeah. Well,
by the way, ladies and gentlemen, New Hampshire is the only place on earth that you're going to see this many liberty-minded people running as Democrats, running as Republicans, running as independents. And mind you, I don't think you're going to win as an independent, but you get your name on the ballot, and it gives people an option.
Yeah, I think running as one of the major party things is the best thing to do. Just tell people whenever you're getting an interview, like, yeah, I lean libertarian. Like, you don't have to lie.
Right. And I want to encourage like people to run as libertarians, not just people, but libertarians, people who care about freedom, people who are even conservative, to run in the college towns and in the urban areas, if that's where you live, as a Democrat. We need to have libertarians on the Democrat ballots in these places where they only vote for Democrats no matter what. And what's really cool about, like, when I go, next time I run, I will run as a Democrat because I get to debate all the other Democrats. And, the thing is, the Democrats are pretty easy to debate because these guys lack wisdom. Most of the guys running as Democrats, they've never really had an actual, they've never been entrepreneurs. They've never really done any kind of actual real hard work. Most of these guys are like career parasite class government employees.
Oh, I'd love to debate a Democrat. That's something I hadn't even thought about.
And the women are actually way more. So the women on the Democrat side would probably kick the crap out of any man on the Democrat side because they're so much tougher, because most of all these Democrat men that I come across in politics, whether it's Massachusetts, New York, Vermont, or New Hampshire, they're textbook soy boys. Just about all of them. And
there's not a firm handshake on any of them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, actually, I did get a firm handshake from a man today. He is probably the manliest Democrat that I've ever met.
Who was that?
That was Wheeler, Representative Wheeler.
Oh, he's awesome.
Yeah, he's a really
great.
cool dude. But he's like from Manchester. He probably, grew up in kind of a rough neighborhood. I don't know anything about him. I'm just assuming that.
Yeah, it is Manchester.
But he gave me an actual manly handshake. And I was like, cool.
He's
great.
I
like that guy.
He's great on drugs, at least.
What I like is just to have a better choice no matter what the primary is. It would seem really terrible to me to have two liberty-minded Republicans running against each other in the primary and one knocks the other out. I'd rather have the choice of a Liberty Democrat and a Liberty Republican running against each other in the general, and then I had to choose between them.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the funny part about that, and that's a great statement, is that for regular working people that care about America or Constitution or what this country is about, you're going to agree on those things. Most of those people are probably going to be Republicans statistically. There are Democrats that just vote that way and have an insulated life, so they don't really deal with stuff. But now things are getting so crazy that they're kind of sitting back and going, I don't know if I can get on board with this stuff. And that's what creates conversations where I've had all sorts of people come up to me, and it's cool to have support and care about popularity, but it's popular. Speaking of that, even if you can't run, go be a poll watcher, do something. I mean, our election up here last time, you can call me a denier, but it shouldn't take me 5 days to find out I lost. If I lost, then that's fine if I did so fairly, but there's a lot of anomalies and weird stuff. And if it didn't happen up here, it's definitely happening everywhere else in the state. So
yeah,
have to have some kind of integrity to have confidence in it.
Yeah, my experience in New Hampshire is that in a town of, 1,200, 1,800 people, something like that, maybe you'll get 600 votes, and they're all put in a wooden box and counted by the end of the evening. You should know by 9 o'clock.
Every time I voted, it's been an electronic voting machine with no receipt that's prints out or anything.
That's because you voted in a big town, but Mark was talking about voting in a little town. Now,
where I live in Wakefield, the way that they district it is weird because it's not all one jurisdiction. Like I vote in a separate place than Brookfield, which is across the street from me.
Mm-hmm.
And I have issues with that. I think it should be consolidated if it's all at the same tax base. But at the same time, I voted with a ballot, and I honestly last time, purposely filled it out so it would get hand counted, and I didn't even have my own vote. But then when I reported that to the Secretary of State's office, they refer you to the Attorney General, and it's like they're not going to do anything. So
wow.
But I was at least able to they got them to acknowledge that was fraudulent, the secretary that was in there. And I'm like, so even though this happened, because essentially I was just wanted a recount. And they said it was denied because it wasn't within the margin. But I brought that up, and they admitted that, but then said, oh, we don't investigate stuff. So you have to go to them, and then we'll think about it.
Give your old run around.
Can you tell us what it takes to do to a ballot to make it so it gets hand counted? Because I think that would be a really good thing to force the hand count.
Well, they changed it. So it was supposed originally right before the election, the general election or the primary, they had so much pushback for people with this concern that they came out with an addendum to the manual. So it said that if you had a printed ballot and someone basically went to other and wrote in a candidate, it's supposed to be picked out.
Hold on there, Justin. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live. More coming up. Don't go anywhere. 603-283-6160. You can call in with whatever's on your mind. It's Free Talk Live. More coming up.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market. Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing. To be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. Physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. Children's lives could have been saved if law enforcement officers had acted sooner when a gunman opened fire at an elementary school in Texas, according to a U.S. Justice Department investigation. The report details the, quote, critical failures in the delayed police response to a school shooting in the town of Uvalde. 19 students and 2 teachers were killed in May 2022. U.S. correspondent Sally Patterson has more.
For almost 2 years, the families of those killed in Uvalde, Texas, have been waiting for answers. Why did it take police so long to stop the school shooter in May 2022? The Justice Department's nearly 600-page report found a plethora of failures that led to the mass shooting, from poor communication and leadership to inadequate training. According to education news outlet K-12 Dive, there were more than 340 school shootings in 2023. That's almost 50 more than the year before. Gun control is one of the most divisive issues in the United States and could shape the outcome of this year's presidential election.
Donald Trump has continued his spat with a judge presiding over his defamation case. On Wednesday, the former president was threatened to be kicked out of court after being accused of being disruptive during the testimony of his accuser, E. Jean Carroll. The writer's back on the witness stand today for further cross-examination. William Denslow reports from New York.
In a series of social media posts, Donald Trump said the civil case brought against him by E. Jean Carroll is made up, just like the other trials he faces. The comments came after he was reprimanded by Judge Lewis Kaplan on Wednesday for making disruptive comments during Carroll's testimony. Last year, the former president was found liable for sexually abusing and defaming the writer. This case, currently underway in New York, is purely focused on whether Trump owes her further damages.
The US mission to the moon is coming to an end today, but not with the expected triumphant landing on the lunar surface. A failure on board means the team is directing the Peregrine spacecraft back home to burn up in the Earth's atmosphere. US correspondent Nick Harper reports.
The joint public-private venture, which took off on January the 8th, had hoped to return the US to the moon's surface for the first time in more than half a century. However, a major propellant leak detected shortly after takeoff from Cape Canaveral meant a moon landing was no longer possible. Instead, the team chose to dispose of the craft rather than letting it fly through space, posing a hazard to satellites and other spacecraft. The Peregrine lander was aiming to explore the lunar surface to gather data ahead of planned missions to once again send humans to the moon in the coming years.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control. And 603-283-6160 is the phone number. That's 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Jay.
And Mark Edge remotely from Honduras.
And Jay, you had something you wanted to tell the listeners?
Yes. So I will be speaking at Anarchapulco this year. Anarchapulco Reborn. It is a 10th anniversary. And it is February 11th to February 16th in the beautiful Secret Garden in Acapulco, Mexico. There is a whole list of speakers. There is, 120 some odd attendees that are on the Whova app right now. I'm getting pretty excited about it. There's a lot of chatter going on with the Whova app. You get access to that once you sign up. But if you want to check this out, there's going to be there's people from all over the world attending this, and I've been chatting with a few of them. And there's going to be a whole bunch of influencers there. just like I can't think of names right now, but anyways, and a lot of great stuff to learn, a lot of great stuff going on. I'm going to be speaking about investing in our posterity, essentially how to raise our kids so they're useful and valuable, how to get them to earn their dopamine hits. And I'm going there with the wife and my 2 kids. You'll be able to meet us all, hang out with us. And if you go to anarchapulco.com and click on tickets and use coupon code JAY, you will get 10% off your tickets. There's also going to be other workshops you can buy, like ayahuasca ceremonies and all different kinds of ceremonies and things you can do, like alternative medicine stuff that I really don't know much about, but is very interesting. And I'm looking forward to learning about things and just the experience of getting out of the cold for a week and going to Acapulco.
Well, thank you for that, Jay. We also have Justin still on the line. Justin, you said you just wanted to wrap up what you were saying about making sure that the ballot you put in gets counted by hand and how they changed that.
Yeah, so my specific comment is what they did last year. There was a specific, essentially, protocol for anybody who wrote in a bunch of stuff. You could still write for a candidate that was on the ballot, but wrote it in and filled in that circle of other space. It was supposed to get kicked out or segregated and then go to be hand counted. So my specific vote for myself, I proved, I didn't follow it all the way through, but basically proved that my vote didn't count for myself, and because I had some other questions. But I don't know if that's going to be the protocol this year. So it changes every election. They set the regulations and stuff beforehand and can do details like that. And that basically came from a push of people who wanted paper ballots in the first place that they keep stonewalling.
So are you going to do some research on that? Are you going to be aware of that new protocol? And if you are, could you call us back and update us with that?
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, I appreciate the time, and I'll call in as regularly as I can if you folks will give me time, because I'm not actually doing any of this because it benefits me, because my life's pretty easy now that I retired and I just have my farm and my old cars and stuff. And it would be easier to not do any of this, but it needs to be done, and we need qualified people to do it. So I'm willing to do that, even though I'll probably have a lot more headaches and a lot more gray hair.
Just because you said you got a farm and old cars, I mean, that's all I need to hear to like you.
I feel like I'm a pretty likable guy. I'm a regular guy, man. I'm not even going to make any more money doing this. So
we really appreciate the call, and I think it's great to hear from somebody who's trying to do something here in New Hampshire. And it's great to connect with somebody who maybe doesn't have the same experience as us. We hear from a lot of libertarians over and over. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's great to let libertarians have a place to speak on the air, but it's great to connect with somebody who's more conservative, used to be a cop, and agrees with us on a lot of things.
I'll tell you something about cops. Mm-hmm. I have had many, 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 many police interactions, probably more than most anybody I know, even a lot of your hardcore activists. And I will tell you right now, 90% of my police interactions have been positive. So for years, I was essentially a truck driver. I would drive to Canada, 3 times a week to go get hay. I would drive to upstate New York and go get hay and haul it back down to, southern New England. So I dealt with a lot of police. And a lot of the times with the police, it was, I had some breakdowns. Like a night like tonight, for example, it's really cold. It's going to get down to like 4 degrees. It's like nothing for your diesel pickup truck or your semi truck to like have a fuel gelling issue and be broke down. And I can tell you, I've had been stuck in snowstorms. I've been broke down on the side of the road either because I blew tires, because it was super cold, fuel gelled up. I've had cops go out of their way above and beyond to help me out. And most of these cops were like...
Well, they're stealing from you, so it's great that they would also help you while stealing from you.
Whatever. They're there doing a job. They're running the thruway, for example, upstate New York. But one thing I got to say about like a lot of the state troopers I dealt with upstate New York, all those guys came from a farming culture. Grandpa had a farm and uncle had a farm, so like they related well with me. Sometimes I had horses on. I had broke down once and I had horses and I was in Pennsylvania, and this cop calls his wife tells his wife to put buckets of water with covers on them in the pickup truck, and a half an hour later his wife shows up with the pickup truck with about 60 gallons of water so we can give all the horses fresh water. And I've had cops run to Napa and pick me up parts. I've had cops just be super, super helpful. I got to say 90% of the time the police it's been a positive experience. Even locally with this DCYF situation I've had, the local police in my local town, they were good. They were just like honorable. They'd be and really they're the kind of cops that, like, when I see them and they're walking towards me, and I get a good feeling. When my local cops, I just interact with them. Hey, how you doing? Give them a handshake, whatever. They're just like pretty nice, all right people.
Well, I mean, it's just like anybody can be nice. Like, a lawyer walking down the street might hold the door open for you, and then 10 minutes later be in a courtroom knowing he's lying about someone.
Yep, that's true.
Trying to ruin someone's life. That's exactly what all cops are doing. And the thing about it is, they might believe they're doing something good, but they don't have a basis in morality because they believe they have authority over other people. So the thing about it is, if somebody wants to run for sheriff and they want to make things less oppressive for people, then I support his right to do it. I'm not saying I support anyone for sheriff of Belknap or Carroll County or anything like that, but I definitely am interested in having more conversations with that guy and appreciate his call. But we have Chuck from Washington on the line. Chuck, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. A great call, by the way, the last caller. I always enjoy listening to Free Talk Live for the understanding of what's happening locally as far as politics is concerned, and it helps me get a glimpse. By the way, I wanted to mention I'm listening to on KTOX in Needles, California here in Washington State. And I'll just say that.
Nice.
Now, one of the things that I would like to ask you, and I think since you have a nationwide program, some people out there are probably dying to know what your observations are as far as this the Republican caucus and everything that's going on in New Hampshire. And I was wondering if you could quickly elaborate on some of the observations that you've made as far as candidates. I'm not talking about the two mainstream candidates, but some of the other candidates who are out there campaigning, and what kind of you guys are seeing out there, all the streamers or ticker tape parades, or what are you all seeing out there in New Hampshire?
Well, I'll jump right in on what I thought about it. My first thought is that Trump, with this historic win, I mean, it's historic.
Why? I didn't hear about that being
sure.
historic.
Yeah, it's Bob Dole in 1988 won by 12 points in Iowa, and I believe that was the largest margin in that caucus. At that historically, caucuses haven't been around that, and primaries haven't been around that long. So we're not talking about the entire length of the U.S. history. Trump got more than 50%. Half of the people that voted for Trump, and they went out in a blizzard to do it, or at least in very cold weather.
Oh yeah, Trump apparently was quoted saying that going out into the blizzard to vote for him is worth dying for. And with Vivek dropping out with 8%, basically you're left with a three-person race. It's Haley, DeSantis, and Trump. And I think that Trump's victory, if he can continue to pile up victories like this one, he makes himself too big to fail. So what I mean by that is that it was possible, if Trump sort of beat everybody, but he only beat him by a little bit, that the Republicans, the GOP, the convention, would come back in, I think it's in July, and they would say, yeah, you did great and everything, Don, but you're just a big liability and we're going to cut you loose. And then they would take the next closest person. And, I'm not talking about what I'm wishing for. This is just an analysis. And Trump won by such a gigantic margin that if he can continue to have these huge margins, the GOP won't have a choice. He'll be too big to fail. They'll have to take him as their nominee, and they'll go from there.
you get to pick. You know, do you like Trump, who will probably have Vivek Ramaswamy in his cabinet somehow, whether he's the vice president
I'm
or
surprised he hasn't called Free Talk Live, by the way. He's
Vivek?
making his rounds. Mr. Ramaswamy, I think he's been really making his rounds on talk radio. Iowa and Alex Jones and some of the.
He's a former listener. He said that he listened to the show, so he must know how it works. He's welcome to call in.
I wouldn't doubt it.
I would really love it if like everything Vivek is saying is truth. And he's being true and honorable and not just trying to sell us some snake oil. I have no idea either way. He almost sounds too good to be true. But and I really, really like a lot about what he says. One thing I can tell you that we have done in my house is the landline is unplugged. You know what I mean, Mark, right?
Yeah. If you've got a landline in New Hampshire every 4 years on the quadrennial,
I can just imagine that.
Yeah,
you're just getting pounded.
Yeah, it just rings nonstop, and it's.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So actually, one of my friends was like, "Oh, can I get your landline forwarded to my phone? I would love to." He's down in Massachusetts. I'd love to answer those calls. And we never looked into it, but anyways, so yeah, it's just we just unplugged the phone because it's ridiculous. I mean,
and on that topic, New Hampshire granted staters have a tendency to lie to pollsters. So I don't. They say Haley's doing. What's that?
Sorry, I never heard that. Like, why is that the case? Why granite staters? Why are they liars? That's weird.
Jay, are you annoyed that people
are
calling your landline asking you about how you're going to vote?
Right. When your toddler's sleeping, finally taking a nap, and the phone rings, and you go to the phone, and it's just some pollster, and half these so what was it? 2020 is when we moved into that house in 2018. So 2020. The anti-Trump, the way that these poll questions are framed, it was very much anti-Republican, anti-freedom, anti-Trump. I don't think I got a single poll question that wasn't some pro-socialist, liberal garbage, from these things.
I get pro-socialist liberal garbage in the form of, hey, would you like to support the police unions? I just hang up.
Yeah, I get that one to my cell phone occasionally. But anyways, yeah, we would get that one a lot to our landline. But yeah, so definitely I would tell them things that would just totally were useless to their sort of derail their their poll, because these guys are garbage pollsters anyways. 99% of them that are calling. I don't think I ever got one that I wouldn't consider garbage. But I can tell you, Nikki Hillary, she is got so much garbage mail. I didn't check my mailbox for 3 days, just because it was snowing, it's busy.
This is good information. This is really good stuff. This is what I was counting on for stuff like this. Go ahead, sir.
So the Nikki Hillary pamphlets. On the so what I do with those things, I throw them on the floor of my truck. So when I'm getting in and out of the truck, the salty, sandy snow gets absorbed in all of these, flyers and pamphlets, and then I just take them and I throw them in a trash can at some gas station or whatever, because I just fill up my own trash too much, and I got a dumpster to pay for. So but the garbage that came from the Nikki Hillary campaign is just insane. I mean, the amount of money that they've got. When I tell you, I have from 3 days of mail in my mailbox, and so there is I think 4 registered voters at that go through that mailbox, I believe. You stack them all up, it's got to be 3.5, 4 inches thick.
Yeah, I get Haley so much, and it's so annoying.
It's Nikki Hillary, not Nikki Haley. Nikki Hillary. She is Hillary Clinton.
Really?
Oh yeah, she's hardcore pro-warmonger. She's let's bring all the useless people to this country, open up the borders so they can collect welfare. Yeah, and there's a lot of talk.
She's a pro-open borders Republican?
Yeah,
she's welcome to call in and clarify her stance if she doesn't feel Jay is doing it justice.
Yeah, she can do that. But and there's a lot of support. She's got a tremendous amount of Democrat support, And and the other thing is too is like
I see. Can I interrupt you, sir,
Go ahead.
real quick? And this is one of the things that I kind of disagree with here. I don't see that. I see the Democrats being more concerned about a possible Nikki Hillary win as opposed to Donald Trump. I think that people in the Democratic circles kind of have this thing like, okay, we already got this model figured out. You can come at us again. We're gonna defeat you. But Nikki Haley, especially on her position on abortion and a couple of other, I call it socially liberal Republican type issues. She's makes people have that warm and fuzzy feeling because it's. Do you understand? I mean, I think that there's more of a chance for Hillary to beat Biden, to tell you the truth. And I don't see how Democrats going out there and caucusing for Kill Hillary or whatever her name is to be productive for that whole movement.
So
it seems to me that they would be out there campaigning for Donald Trump.
So I have like multiple routes that I travel monthly around New Hampshire. I cover quite a bit of ground here between just doing what I do in my routine. And all of the places that are been flying these Ukraine flags for the couple years. They had in 2020, they had the Biden signs. The last 2022 election cycle for state rep, they had all the Democrats. These guys have Nikki Hillary signs there.
I see what you're saying.
And so that's what I'm noticing. And also, I see Trump stuff all over the place. Like there is just Trump signs. You can't swing a dead cat, going down the road without hitting a couple of Trump signs. I see Trump signs all over rural New Hampshire. I see actually a bunch of Trump signs on windows and porches in Concord. I was there today. And that's our capital city here. And then I do see and the Nikki Hillary signs are like everywhere. There's like no man's land, like somebody doesn't own it. It's like on the side of like the state highway or in some median. There's a whole bunch of Nikki Hillary signs all over the place there. And her campaign's definitely pouring some money. And especially on the road I live on, the state highway I live on, I know exactly who the Democrats are. Like I know, like, for example, I'm like, oh, when the mobs of hungry people come out of the cities, those poor people with their "I support Democrat" signs are going to be like the houses that are first looted and ransacked because, if anybody's paying attention, those guys don't have guns because they're like, probably anti-gun Democrats.
Right.
And
a Democrat campaign sign is equal to saying this house is unarmed.
Pretty much, especially in New Hampshire, because...
Well, I don't know about especially New Hampshire because I've heard that more Democrats have guns in New Hampshire than a Democrat in, Massachusetts.
Well, that's because more people in New Hampshire have guns.
Right.
So, because it's so easy to own guns. And
I've seen, pro-gun bumper stickers on cars that have Bernie Sanders bumper stickers, and it just confused my brain.
Well...
But only in New Hampshire.
I can tell you if they have a Trump...
Well, I've seen those in Washington, too. Washington, Oregon, the Bernie Sanders with the guns. Yeah, I see that here.
Everybody I know that has a Trump sign in their front yard that I personally know that has a Trump sign has enough guns and ammunition and, bulletproof vests and whatever else you could think of. They can arm all of their neighbors.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
And then all of their neighbors are the same way. And I can tell you that the hardcore Democrats that I know, they're like, oh yeah, I got a
bat.
I got a 22 for shooting squirrels.
Uh-oh.
Or I got a 410 shotgun, single barrel shotgun, or breech load shotgun, whatever you call it, for shooting the shooting a bobcat that's trying to eat my chickens or whatever.
My grandma, who's a very sweet lady that lives in California who loves Hillary Clinton, she would tell my dad, it's fine, I have a bat behind the door. And my dad was like, get rid of the bat. They're just going to beat you with it. She's an older woman. Bat was going to be more of a liability.
But there is a whole bunch of these signs that I see.
You have a knife next to the bed. That might be helpful.
Yeah.
I can maybe steal grandma. instead of a sinner.
Yeah, the only way grandma is going to be equal to a 250-pound, thug that needs to get his next hit of whatever he's addicted to is by having a peacemaker.
Yeah.
And knowing how to operate it blindfolded, essentially. So, yeah, the New Hampshire politics is interesting to where we have a Republican governor that wins by like a huge majority, but yet on the same exact ballots, the Democrats win by a huge majority in, say, state representative position or, county attorney or sheriff or, whatever else. That's an interesting thing, but also it's another reason I just don't trust these voting machines. And
now, what do you mean by voting machines? And this is where I think we could have an opportunity to iron something out here. When I say voting machines, I'm with you. I don't like to see stuff connected to the internet. That's what makes me nervous about anything. Stuff connected to the internet directly, and then you have the possibility of, corrupting the vote.
I'll tell you what I mean by a voting machine. A machine where you put your ballot in, and then you just walk away from it and you don't get a receipt. A machine that at the end of the night, the guy pushes a button and it has a little register thing that prints out a receipt and says, "Oh, we have X amount of ballots for, candidate A and X amount of ballots for candidate B or votes or whatever." But that machine has software in it. It has a computer. I don't care if it's hooked up to the internet or not. That's irrelevant, I think, because like these Diebold voting machines, and I forget the name of the other company, they have proprietary software that not even Congress can look at. Not even the state representatives can look at. Nobody can look at this proprietary software because it belongs exclusively to this company. So knowing what little I know about computer programming and blockchain, and like Bitcoin blockchain, for example, which is open source, means that anybody who knows how to operate a computer and look at this blockchain can examine it and see where there might be a flaw or what's going on, or at least look at this, essentially digital accounting ledger and with confidence be like, oh, yes, this all jives, this agrees. That is not possible to voting machines. And these voting machines should be able to spit out a receipt and say exactly what your ballot says. And they have the ability to do that, but they will not make that function
This should
happen.
be free and open source software.
Yes.
But also, apparently, how Javier Milei won in Argentina as a open ANCAP. Well, they had just implemented getting rid of the voting machines and this was the first election since then. And ANCAP wins. I don't know if that's a coincidence. Thank you for the call, Chuck. It's Free Talk Live. More coming up. 603-283-6160 is the phone number. That's 603-283-6160.
Never, ever send a follow-up email asking, "Did you get my email?" Email 101. If it didn't bounce back undeliverable, it got where you sent it. And avoid transmedia pestering, like calling to ask, "Did you get my email?" or emailing to say, "I left you a voicemail." If your emails and voicemails aren't being acknowledged, your problem isn't technology, it's technique. Is your message concise and understandable? Have you boiled it down to seem as relevant as possible to the recipient? In other words, is it the opposite of spam or junk mail? All of this really matters if you're a job seeker. But even if you're not, with money and attention so scarce now, effective communication skills have never been more important. For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.fm.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. Children's lives could have been saved if law enforcement officers had acted sooner when a gunman opened fire at an elementary school in Texas, according to a U.S. Justice Department investigation. The report details the, quote, critical failures in the delayed police response to a school shooting in the town of Uvalde. 19 students and 2 teachers were killed in May 2022. U.S. correspondent Sally Patterson has more.
For almost 2 years, the families of those killed in Uvalde, Texas, have been waiting for answers. Why did it take police so long to stop the school shooter in May 2022? The Justice Department's nearly 600-page report found a plethora of failures that led to the mass shooting, from poor communication and leadership to inadequate training. According to education news outlet K-12 Dive, there were more than 340 school shootings in 2023. That's almost 50 more than the year before. Gun control is one of the most divisive issues in the United States and could shape the outcome of this year's presidential election.
Donald Trump has continued his spat with a judge presiding over his defamation case. On Wednesday, the former president was threatened to be kicked out of court after being accused of being disruptive during the testimony of his accuser, E. Jean Carroll. The writer's back on the witness stand today for further cross-examination. William Denslow reports from New York.
In a series of social media posts, Donald Trump said the civil case brought against him by E. Jean Carroll is made up, just like the other trials he faces. The comments came after he was reprimanded by Judge Lewis Kaplan on Wednesday for making disruptive comments during Carroll's testimony. Last year, the former president was found liable for sexually abusing and defaming the writer. This case, currently underway in New York, is purely focused on whether Trump owes her further damages.
The US mission to the moon is coming to an end today, but not with the expected triumphant landing on the lunar surface. A failure on board means the team is directing the Peregrine spacecraft back home to burn up in the Earth's atmosphere. US correspondent Nick Harper reports.
The joint public-private venture, which took off on January the 8th, had hoped to return the US to the moon's surface for the first time in more than half a century. However, a major propellant leak detected shortly after takeoff from Cape Canaveral meant a moon landing was no longer possible. Instead, the team chose to dispose of the craft rather than letting it fly through space, posing a hazard to satellites and other spacecraft. The Peregrine lander was aiming to explore the lunar surface to gather data ahead of planned missions to once again send humans to the moon in the coming years.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. Lawmakers in the United States are racing against the clock to avert a partial government shutdown, with just a day left until funding runs dry. Both chambers of Congress, the House of Representatives and the Senate, must pass a short-term extension by the end of Friday. But recent history shows that consensus can be hard to come by on Capitol Hill. From Washington, Benji Hire reports.
On the line, a shutdown that would halt funding for key government agencies, transportation, housing, energy. A stopgap bill last November kept the coffers open over the new year. Now lawmakers will have to agree to extend to push those impending shutdown deadlines to March, when the nation will likely reach this precipice again.
Authorities in the United States will return $8.9 million recovered from the state of New Jersey to Nigeria. The money was looted by Nigerian government officials to acquire property in 2014. Ajak Mangut reports.
According to New Jersey Royal Court documents, the property was acquired with stolen funds from Nigeria by high-ranking officials within certain departments of the Nigerian government in 2014. The court, on January 12th, granted the state attorney general's request for the forfeiture of the property deposited in a Jersey bank account by Nigerian companies. The U.S. court said the diverted funds were meant for procurement of arms for Nigerian forces to combat Boko Haram terrorists. The funds were, however, diverted through foreign bank accounts to family members of the former ruling People's Democratic Party during the 2015 general elections. The recovery followed a forfeiture notice filed in New Jersey State's Royal Court under the state's relatively new 2018 law governing civil forfeiture of assets. This was done in partnership with the New Jersey Attorney General and the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Ajak Mangut, Abuja.
And that's the latest feature story news. Kate Fisher reporting.
Odds are, if you've looked outside recently, you've noticed that all dogs everywhere are running. Scientists can't explain why all over the world dogs of every breed are running nonstop. I'm joined now by animal behavior expert Dr. Charles Davenport. Charles, what can you tell us?
All we know for sure is that the dogs are running fast.
But we don't know why the dogs are running?
There are a few reasons that dogs normally run. Because they're excited or scared, or they see something they want far away, or because they're happy. However, usually, they don't run at the same time or in the same direction.
Do we have any idea where the dogs are running?
West. All the dogs are running west.
Do we expect the dogs to ever stop running?
We don't know. Animal behavior can evolve over time. Maybe running forever is just what the dogs do now.
Dr. Davenport, is there any chance that the running dogs are somehow related to last night's blue meteor shower? Or the fact that horses are screaming?
Inconclusive.
Well, please keep us posted. Up next, where are all the children?
This is the Onion News Network.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control. And 603-283-6160 is the phone number for you to call. That's 603-283-6160. And Free Talk Live is brought to you by Forkfest, happening June 13th through the 16th at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Forkfest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Forkfest is decentralized, so there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. For more information and to connect with other attendees, you can visit the unofficial website, forkfest.party. That's forkfest.party. And I know there are a lot of people up here in New Hampshire that want to make Forkfest great again, and I'm excited about that. I think the alternative to anything that the Free State Project is running is important, because I don't like people who, just decide to go crazy with power because they run the calendar or run the freaking Pork Fest. It's so dumb. With you in the studio tonight, it's me, Bonnie.
Jay.
And Mark, coming to you from Honduras.
And we already have a caller on the line. Unscreened caller, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
It's your boy, the evolutionary capitalist. Hey,
that's the creepiest noise you could possibly make.
I wanted to debunk more Free Talk Lives and challenge Jay. Hey, Jay, man, why do you keep perpetuating that JFK myth with that Executive Order 11110? You know that executive order, that wasn't him believing in a national currency or trying to issue silver certificates. He was trying to usher in the Federal Reserve note. Did you know that?
Did he make a statement about it?
Oh, I have before.
No, did JFK?
Yeah, well, his only statement about, it's in his order, but his only statement about silver as money is in the 1963 economic report, where he said silver serves no useful purpose as money, except for coins, but they got rid of that too.
Yeah,
after he died.
As soon as they assassinated him, they got rid of the silver, so there was no more. I think they had a commemorative coin. The 1965 is 40% silver. And then no more.
He started the process, Jay. He started the process to get rid of silver as money.
Okay.
He's getting rid of silver certificates with that order.
I'm not aware of that, but
so he didn't.
Yeah, can you let Jay talk? Skeeter, you're always complaining about other people.
I only have a short time, but he didn't issue.
No. You have 3 hours every Thursday, Skeeter. So let Jay talk.
Talk like when you. Go ahead, Jay.
Anyways, poor Skeeter. He just likes to be annoying. I
He's
kind of
still
wonder.
on. I just muted him.
Yeah, and he annoys the heck out of you. He gets you going.
Well, I'd like to point out, guys, you can't pay for the kind of fan that Skeeter is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like somebody who's going to call in and challenge and give you the opportunity to, make your point. That kind of stuff is ultimately very valuable. So I'm grateful for Skeeter for calling in. It's just that, yes, we do have to be able to respond. Please go ahead, Jay.
So, anyways, he says that Executive Order 11110, and that might even not be the correct thing. I haven't looked at the JFK stuff much in like 20 years. Because I've just, moved on to bigger and better other things. But the silver certificates that were issued by the Treasury, that was, from what I can tell, a JFK thing. These bills, every time I've seen one, I've actually got a whole stack of them, a little $1, and I got some $5 and some 10s, because every time I came across one, I just kept it, my whole life, because this thing's cool. It says,
there are $10 silver certificates? I've only ever seen the ones.
I'm pretty no. So I could be wrong on that. It might be a $10 1950 note that says will pay to the bearer on demand, $10 in lawful currency or something.
I'd call that silver.
But it doesn't say silver certificate. I haven't looked at this stack in. I mean, the last time I looked at it was the last time I moved, and I was just like, "Oh, there's my silver certificates. Okay, I'm going to move them from this safe into this safe because I got a bigger safe."
You can believe there's people listening who know exactly what you're talking about.
Right. So, I mean, yeah, Skeeter could be right. I don't know. But I do believe JFK. Based on the research I have done, that he was assassinated essentially for the same reason that they put Ian in jail, and the same reason that the money changers got rid of Jesus, because he messed with the bankers. The FBI is running a protection racket for the pedophile elite and all of Jeffrey Epstein's friends, including the bankers. So when you got guys like Ian who are providing an alternative to the fractional reserve debt slavery system, that is choking everybody, whether you participate in taxes or not, just via the interest. And then you have JFK, who was, very much against the international banking cartel, who expressed being against the Federal Reserve. And I could be wrong. I mean, I'm not an expert.
Here's if JFK didn't make a statement about it, here's all we know. This is what Executive Order 11110 says. It says, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the section of blah, 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 it is ordered as follows, Section 1, blah, blah, blah. The authority vested in the President by paragraph B of Section 43, blah, 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 date 1933, as amended in USC whatever, to issue silver certificates against any silver bullion, silver or standard silver dollars in the Treasury, not then held for redemption of any outstanding silver certificates, to prescribe the denominations of such silver certificates, and to coin standard silver dollars and subsidiary silver currency for their redemption. So there's more to it, but so far, are you hearing anything, Skeeter, that makes you want to make your point? Does that make your point, or?
Yeah, that order wasn't issued in a vacuum by itself. It was a response to a previous order he gave just at the same time. So he repealed the Silver Purchase Act first.
So what is that?
Then he had to issue.
What's the Silver Purchase Act?
It's the act that forces kind of the government to kind of make silver certificates and issue and redeem silver as make silver as redeemable, because silver certificates go all the way back into the 1800s. It's not because of JFK. So he was getting rid of silver certificates. That's what he was doing. He repealed the Silver Purchase Act, and then because he repealed the Silver Purchase Act, he had to, the Silver Purchase Act gave the Treasury the power to issue silver certificates. So he destroyed that power, and he had to issue it back to the Treasurer with that executive order just to get rid of the rest of the silver. But anyways, I really want to talk about bear arms, and that I dispelled that lie. But I'm wondering why you guys give Bear Arms a platform with his lies.
I don't think he's lying.
Well,
yeah, I mean, I can
Skeeter,
show you his
as far as the platforming thing goes, I've had this conversation up and down the dial. We've had Christopher Cantwell, the crying Nazi, call this show. I'd take a call from Jeffrey Dahmer, Tori Alive. It doesn't, as far as deplatforming callers, because they may say a thing that you consider to be untrue. I can't know whether something's true or untrue at any given time. And
at least look at what he claims. I mean, it's right there for you to look at. You can see the definition of employee in the tax code, and it isn't what he's saying. If you want to pull it up, Title 26, Section 3401C, you can look at it. He omits the word includes. So when you have an inclusion statement, that is not a definition. I can say cars. The term cars includes red cars. That doesn't mean all cars are red.
It means only red cars.
But not limited to. What was that?
When the word includes is used in definitions, according to all the lawyers, according to the statutory construction manuals that all of them I've studied, this word includes is very important. Includes means only what is being referenced.
I don't think so.
Yes. And now if it says includes but not limited to, then it means includes but not limited to red cars.
No, I don't think so. Sometimes it's I don't think so. I don't know the law, but you can see if you read one paragraph below that section, it defines employee and employer in the same sentence. It's co-defined. You can see it there. It's for the purposes of this chapter, the term employer means person for whom an individual performs or performed any service.
But do you know what service is? But do you know what service is?
As the employee of such person.
So the thing about it that I went to Bear Arms in-person talk about this, and he isn't not reading the next sentence. This would be a more interesting conversation if Bear Arms was on. Like, it's kind of just like no one knows what Skeeter's talking about. But I went to his thing, and the thing about it is you're not performing a service, in his opinion, with his research into the meaning of the words according to the law, if you're just like cutting hair, blah, blah, blah. Service means government work is what he would tell you. So you're busting of his opinion kind of fails there.
Plus, this is a hard, type of show to present something like Bear has to present.
Right.
So I suggested that.
It's right there in the code. I mean...
Yep, the sentence you said is right there, and I just explained to you why it doesn't make your point. But thank you for the call, Skeeter.
So this is a hard show to present what Bear Arms has to say, because the problem is you're basically going to just get enough information to get yourself in trouble because the callers sort of rule the show. Like, I have a friend who wants to call in who says, "Oh, I'd like to go on Free Talk Live and talk about what's going on in Argentina." And I'm like, well, you might not be able to, because you're going to get callers and you're going to have other calls and there's other show prep going on, and it's Free Talk Live. So if the phone's all stacked up with a whole bunch of callers, and it's entertaining and it's fun, we're going to take those calls. And then if and you're probably not going to be able to talk about it much if I'm on the show, because I can derail about any topic real easy. But anyways, so I suggested he go on Ernie Hancock's show. In fact, I got to make that connection happen. But it's Skeeter definitely. I'm not even sure. I have less credibility in what he had to say about the JFK stuff after listening to the Bear Arms stuff, because before even Bear Arms presented this, stuff about the IRS and, the definitions of the words employee and service, and includes Christopher Gronsky, destinationfreedoms.org, I believe is his website. He, for years now, for decades, has been doing seminars and classes, and he does webinars now, and he's got a whole bunch of videos on his website you can watch for free. He's got a bunch that talks about all of these same things. And in fact, Bear Arms and Gronsky's things about the IRS, they all jive. They basically they're giving sort of the same type of information with respect to like, the Title 26 or 28 or whatever it is. But
Jay, I just can't accept it. I can't accept that a group of people has near ultimate authority over our lives, and somehow they missed this one little thing where in the law where they can make certain people pay and not certain people pay. This just seems like good people, law-abiding people, the people that want to do the right thing, trying to find some legal loophole for everything that's going on, when in fact it's just an organization that if we didn't have the government, they'd be a bunch of mafia dons otherwise, and they'd force you to do a thing. That's what it seems like to me.
And you could fight them back if they didn't have the
Sure.
faith and force of the government. I'll tell you, when you have a problem with a mafia and you take out a couple of their dudes, they're like, oh, we're going to leave him alone.
Maybe. This is not advice on how to deal with the mafia.
Well, but if you have a problem with the mafia and you prove that you're low-hanging fruit, they're just going to keep taking and taking and taking and taking from you. If you try to get violent with any level of government whatsoever, whether it's the local dog catcher or I don't know, somebody in a presidential cabinet, whoever it is, they are going to just rain hellfire on you of whatever form, whatever capacity, because they have unlimited resources, because they steal, to where the mafia has actually limited resources. They are not as well funded as as the government. So you can't be going and getting violent in retribution with the government. I don't recommend anybody do that. You shouldn't use violence, whatever. But there is definitely peaceful means of straightening the government out. David Jose on Twitter, you guys should check him out. His affidavit process is really good. And I can tell you from personal experience, I've never dealt with the guy. Well, I dealt with him once, and what they said to and it was just a phone call with the IRS, because I don't have a social security number, I don't participate in any of that stuff, and also I have skills to where I don't need to go like get some job somewhere, and get paid a quote unquote wage. I don't need to be an employee. I've never been an employee in my life, and so but one customer, Girl Scouts of America, I used to lease them horses and sell them hay and grain. And they were like, oh, we're not going to pay you this, it was like $24,000 or something one year. We're not going to pay you unless you, fill out this 1099 and just that and the other thing. I'm like, all right, whatever. What information you want? And they're like, social security number. And I'm like, I don't have one. And they're like, oh, well, that's a problem. We're not going to pay you, or we're going to deduct 33% of it. And I says,
whoa. And
I said, no, that's not part of a deal. You're now in breach of a contract. I have a contract with you. I provided you a service. I go, and I'm like, all right, I'll just take my horses if you're not going to pay me. Like the deal was they wanted 90 days to, pay their bill, because they're a small nonprofit. This is Connecticut Girl Scouts of America. They had a horseback riding program, amazing, awesome program. I felt like I was doing a good thing, working with these people, and they did a great job. They built confidence in a lot of young ladies with that riding program and that stuff there. And it still operates today. It's a great operation. So I was like, well, you guys are in breach of contract. I guess I'll just load my horses up on my trailer. I'll be, I'm going to come get them. So I show up there to get the horses. I'm like, I'm taking my horses. They're mine. You haven't paid me for it. And I had contacted the local sheriff. I had talked to him. I says, hey, I need your assistance here. These are my horses. They're not paying me. I got to go get them. And he's like, oh, that's a bummer. That's a great program. My daughter went there last year. She loved the horseback riding program. And so I'm in the office with the accountant, and I said, why don't you just call an IRS agent and someone at the IRS and ask them what to do? Or she threatened to call someone from the IRS. I'm like, call them.
Do it, yeah.
Please do. We got to figure this out, because I'm leaving with my horses. You're not going to pay me for this, and then I'm going to sue you because you put me through all this aggravation. And and so she talks to an IRS agent, and he's like, oh, well, you don't have a social security number? That's okay. And he says, are you Amish by any chance? And I says, I identify as Amish. Sure. I like the Amish thing, and she goes, just put old order Amish where it says social security number, and you'll be fine. And but these accountants, they're like they don't really know anything. They're just they're just bean counters, and they're just like the lawyers, and
you
most
might
of
have
the
also
politicians.
got I'm not making like any point that you're wrong or Mark's wrong or anything, but you might have also gotten lucky with the IRS agent you got, because a friend of ours who used to be an accountant, he said him and the other accountants in the office would have a question like, what is the correct way to do this? They would make a game out of every single one of them calling the IRS and asking the IRS the answer, and every single one of them getting a different answer.
So this particular IRS agent that this accountant called was a friend.
Oh.
They had a relationship. And the IRS agent was like, really thought that, like, you know, the horseback riding program and all this stuff he was a really nice guy.
Yeah, he
He's
wanted
like,
to make
yeah,
a way for it to work out.
Just put old order
both of you.
Amish. That's what we see this all the time. It's not a big deal. Jack, go ahead, pay the man. You're fine. You're not. The accountant was worried that she was gonna, her concern for herself due to her. She was ignorant of the situation. She was like, oh, if I pay you this $24,000. I'm going to have to give the IRS a third of that.
Yep.
And that's going to be my mistake. And I don't want to be responsible for, $8,000, I guess it would be. I sort of don't blame her.
Yeah.
I mean, I was getting annoyed with her about not paying me, but I was cool about it. I was very polite. I continued to do business with those guys for several years after that.
Doing business on Free Talk Live for 20 years, I can tell you that the people who make the deals are often not the people who pay the deals.
Right.
And it is frustrating.
Well, it looks like we do have a caller on the line. Let's go to the phones. Ricky in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Ricky, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Thank you there, Miss Bonnie.
Yeah,
Brother
thanks for holding.
Jay?
Yeah.
Yeah, Brother Mark, good evening.
Hello, Ricky.
Well, I was just sitting here before I go into it. I got to tell you, Brother Mark, now you may be grateful that Scuzzy calls into the show, but I'm most definitely not grateful that I follow him way, way too much. And I will say this, do not only Ricky from the Commonwealth a favor, but also the rest of the members of the Commonwealth stay far the hell away from Pennsylvania. You know what, Slimy? Maybe you might want to consider moving to Honduras. That way you and Mark can hang out all the time. What do you think that, Mark?
Well, it's a big country, that's for sure. And I can't promise that I'll be in any one given place at any one given time.
There you go. But that being said, I definitely don't want him anywhere near me. He's like a bad dream. He really is. I mean, Scuzzy is scary. I mean, he's a scary person. It makes you wonder what he does with the rest of his week.
Yeah, the noises he makes.
It's like he's going to become the next Unabomber or something.
Seriously, like the Joker.
Oh, he's a comedian, most definitely. But here's why I called in, Brother Mark. Now, this,
yes.
because I kind of got messed up and I didn't get a chance to get to it this past week. But it was the other week. A couple questions for you. Now, hopefully your memory is good. You mentioned something to the effect of me not being little and that I'm a big man and about sending pictures. Do you remember this? Talk about yourself?
I do recall. I recall that to some extent. I also recall you saying that you're a tall man and not a svelte one in a big leather duster, which is also going to make you look a little more impressive.
I lost some inch. Okay, that's where you remember it. Yeah, I used to be at 5'11.5", but I lost some height because of my spinal damage. But you said there was pictures sent in. I didn't send them. Did somebody else do it?
Somebody at some point showed me a picture and said, "This is Ricky from the Commonwealth."
I've never seen it.
Was it just a headshot with my club masters on?
This is the memory issue that you're talking about.
What even is that? What's the club master?
Sunglasses. It's the only ones I look in. Ray-Bans. It's the only ones I look good in.
Couldn't tell you.
I got to buy a new pair. But the fact of the matter
is,
that was
Ricky, here's the funny thing about not doing research is anybody could show me a picture of anybody and say this is Ricky from the Commonwealth, and I would have to believe them, because how would I know?
Well, the fact of the matter is, it's really funny because the reason why I bring this up is, I don't know if you remember, I ran for office the first time. It was a learning experience in 2017.
It sounds like the bumper music is on. So, Ricky, if you'll just hold that thought, 603-283-6160. If you want to get in on the conversation and bring up whatever is on your mind, 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live. More coming up.
Free Talk Live.
Trisha, you deserve the forgiveness. Absolutely. I know that it feels like you've made some mistakes, and you know what? You have made mistakes. Now, it doesn't feel like this.
Who hasn't?
Right. A, it doesn't make any sense for you to continue to beat yourself up. You're not going to get anything out of it. Nobody else is going to get anything out of it.
That's
But
true.
B, you would give the forgiveness to somebody else. You deserve that forgiveness for yourself.
And only you can give it to yourself.
I mean,
and I think forgiveness is about moving on for yourself, being able to come to a position in your own mind where you're ready to just accept what went wrong and try your best to do better in the future. And find self-assess and find areas that you can improve. And I think, bringing forgiveness to the table for yourself is one of the most important things that you can do.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern at freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. Children's lives could have been saved if law enforcement officers had acted sooner when a gunman opened fire at an elementary school in Texas, according to a U.S. Justice Department investigation. The report details the, quote, critical failures in the delayed police response to a school shooting in the town of Uvalde. 19 students and 2 teachers were killed in May 2022. U.S. correspondent Sally Patterson has more.
For almost 2 years, the families of those killed in Uvalde, Texas, have been waiting for answers. Why did it take police so long to stop the school shooter in May 2022? The Justice Department's nearly 600-page report found a plethora of failures that led to the mass shooting, from poor communication and leadership to inadequate training. According to education news outlet K-12 Dive, there were more than 340 school shootings in 2023. That's almost 50 more than the year before. Gun control is one of the most divisive issues in the United States and could shape the outcome of this year's presidential election.
Donald Trump has continued his spat with a judge presiding over his defamation case. On Wednesday, the former president was threatened to be kicked out of court after being accused of being disruptive during the testimony of his accuser, E. Jean Carroll. The writer's back on the witness stand today for further cross-examination. William Denslow reports from New York.
In a series of social media posts, Donald Trump said the civil case brought against him by E. Jean Carroll is made up, just like the other trials he faces. The comments came after he was reprimanded by Judge Lewis Kaplan on Wednesday for making disruptive comments during Carroll's testimony. Last year, the former president was found liable for sexually abusing and defaming the writer. This case, currently underway in New York, is purely focused on whether Trump owes her further damages.
The US mission to the moon is coming to an end today, but not with the expected triumphant landing on the lunar surface. A failure on board means the team is directing the Peregrine spacecraft back home to burn up in the Earth's atmosphere. US correspondent Nick Harper reports.
The joint public-private venture, which took off on January the 8th, had hoped to return the US to the moon's surface for the first time in more than half a century. However, a major propellant leak detected shortly after takeoff from Cape Canaveral meant a moon landing was no longer possible. Instead, the team chose to dispose of the craft rather than letting it fly through space, posing a hazard to satellites and other spacecraft. The Peregrine lander was aiming to explore the lunar surface to gather data ahead of planned missions to once again send humans to the moon in the coming years.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSM.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number to get in on the conversation with us. That's 603-283-6160. You can bring up whatever you want in this last segment of the show. And with you in the studio tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Jay.
Mark Edge.
That was Mark. It kind of cut you off there, but
Did
you're
it?
Edge.
Mark Edge.
Yeah, that sounded better. We do have a caller on the line. We have Ricky from Pennsylvania still on the line with us. Ricky, go ahead and say what you were trying to say in the last segment.
Oh, that's all right, Miss Bonnet. Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. No, I was just saying to Brother Mark, one of the things that's when I'm saying about running for office again, I tested the waters back in 17, and I had a lot of support then. But one thing that it taught me one thing, how easy it is to win. See, now I'm something called organized. I have a campaign manager, the other Ricky. And that with the two Rickies, nothing can be stopped. And the fact of the matter is, I wanted to talk to you about something important, though, Mark. You see, now, when I talked about the other week when I went and got my nails done, I wanted to point out to you, I don't know if you were even listening to my call, Mark, because there was 5 girls in there. Now, there was 2 workers, a manager, and we had a great conversation. She loved my battle flag and other things we were talking about. Everybody was involved in it. And there was this one joker woman as she's walking out like these people do. And you know the damnedest thing she said to me? She said to me, beyond the stuff that I said before about, the problems is liberals, I was being a Jeffersonian. I said, I guess I would be. But I pointed out to her, this is the battle flag, that's right. And why am I wearing it? Because I am going into battle. It's called against the federal government. But you know what she said to me, Mark? This is what I meant about there's something wrong with conservative people. She said, well, here's the thing we got to do. We got to get rid of Pelosi. Well, first of all, Commonwealth's answer is to blow it away. So Pelosi doesn't matter for anything. And anyway, she's no longer Speaker of the House. What the hell is wrong with these people? Whether it be her or Trump or all these other jokers, they're living in the past with Obama and all these other things. Do you hear these things, Mark? Are they in some kind of time warp?
Well, I mean, everybody's got their team, and that's, but they're just going to blame all the problems on the other team because that's the way it goes. The fact is none of us have any control over what goes on in Washington, D.C., and we never will because it was designed that way. That the whole Republic process is a treadmill intended for you to waste your entire life trying to change one little thing.
Well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to change one little thing. It's
What's
called blowing away the U.S. Constitution, Mark. Now, let me ask you this big question. Now, you're living in Honduras. Now, the question is, would you rather live in Honduras or once Commonwealth is the catalyst to blowing it away and we become the Confederate Commonwealth of Pennsylvania? Would you rather be in somewhere like that?
I just want the difficult part that I have is it's very difficult to find a place that's nice to live and has low taxes. The United States has high taxes, and I'm just not willing to pay them.
Mark, I got your answer for you. See, one of the things that's fascinating, because now it's a shame Brother Ian's not around to hear this. You see, this was up the night, and you may remember this show possibly when we had a long show actually, and it was I started and it continued on about radio dying basically, and there is no more affiliates in northeastern Pennsylvania on radio. But the funny thing is it became very apparent to me that people listen either to the live show on the stream or the podcast version to hear myself or the show in general. Because I do have a following, and I have, going past months, I went to 6 different locations in 2 different counties, and there I am with my battle flag, and I get this one, no taxes for you. People know who Ricky from the Commonwealth is. See, here's the answer. This was a big question. What are you going to do about taxes? First of all, you blow it away, it's all gone. Okay, all income tax and payroll tax, all that stuff. You don't need it. The federal government's gone. And as far as the other, and I know this will definitely work in Pennsylvania. I've pre-canvassed this, and I know Pennsylvania very well. And I like to consider myself the ultimate Pennsylvanian. And this may not work everywhere, but it will in Pennsylvania, because people love to be part of their government, especially like this. You see, to make it official, what we will do, and I think you would find this satisfactory, it's a donation. It's not mandatory, but to make it official, we would have a memorandum. I'm figuring maybe 2%. Think about this. It'd be kind of like an income tax. It's not a tax. It's a donation. You're not required to pay it. And if you don't have it, you don't have to pay it.
Is this
And
something
if you got
that
it again, you can
someone
pay it.
running for your office would be able to implement at all, or just you want to start the conversation?
Excuse me?
Is this something that someone running for the office you're running for would be able to implement at all, or is it just something you want to bring the conversation up about?
That's the thing, Miss Bonnet. See, people don't either people don't realize, or people are too afraid to utilize the power in the legislative district. See, in Pennsylvania, the legislature is extremely powerful. Why do you think I'm going for that? Because that's how you're going to blow it away. But also the power in that one seat is immense to those who understand it. But the problem is, like the woman that's in there now, Representative Probst, she's screwing up beyond belief. A good example of this, she's the champion of cannabis, she calls herself. But she's screwing up. I spoke to her personally early on in January. Now, the fact of the matter is she's screwing up because she's making shaded deals with Republicans and already talking about distribution and taxes. Now, the last time her office is going to hear from me is when she was in Harrisburg a good number of months ago. You
got to talk to Nikki Haley then?
Excuse me?
You got to talk to Nikki Haley?
This isn't Nikki Haley. This is the woman who's currently
Representative Probst.
Oh.
This is going to be my would-be opponent if she gets elected, and I'm going to say reelected because what she's doing is she's screwing up recreational weed for everybody because that's her big campaign promise. And the problem is once you do what she's doing, we've seen it happen before. I said to her office, and this will be the last time I speak to them because they now know who I am. They know who Ricky from the Commonwealth is because I called her out months ago on the show with Brother Ian.
You should show up in your battle flag.
Well, I just think that there's not a lot we can say about what Ricky is talking about, but I do thank you for the call. I wasn't sure what to say about like the picture. You can always email us a picture of you if you want to make whatever point you're making. You can email it ian@freetalklive.com.
Yeah, in thinking about it, my guess is that Ricky ran for office. Somebody got a picture of it, and then it was probably being passed around in like one of the mini Free Talk Live rooms, like On Air Now, where I don't know how you sign up, Bonnie, but my guess is you go to social.freetalklive.com and there's some instructions there.
Yeah, I think it's social.freetalklive.com, but you can also go to the Mastodon now at social.freetalklive.com because our Mastodon was down for a little while, and just want to let everybody know that it is back up now, the Mastodon that's at social.freetalklive.com. But this from Al Jazeera says the U.S. Justice Department says critical failures in the Uvalde school shooting response. So, if you guys remember, there was a school shooting in Uvalde, Texas, at Robb Elementary School, and it was really bad, not just because children dying is bad, but because the cops seemed to bumble as hard as someone could possibly bumble and fumble this. And they waited a very long time before doing anything, with the shooter just holed up in a room with the kids. They kept
prevented parents from going in there and getting their kids.
Yeah, I think they wanted mass casualties to push this agenda.
I agree. It's crazy. And the article says, police failed in their response to the 2022 elementary school shooting in Uvalde, Texas, that killed 19 children and 2 teachers, according to a U.S. Department of Justice report. The report cited critical failures and faulted law enforcement officers for waiting more than an hour to breach the classroom where the 18-year-old gunman was holed up with students and staff, leaving the children inside to make panicked 911 calls. The victims
Incredible.
Yep, it's disgusting. The victims and survivors of the mass shooting at Robb Elementary School deserved better. How can an entire police station behave like this if they're supposed to be brave? They got this job because they're supposed to be brave people. They just let all these children die.
Well, my guess is that command probably gave an order, which is, don't you dare go in there, boys, and you stop anybody else from going in there, or whatever the situation was.
So that makes my point that being a mindless automaton is just as immoral as being like somebody who goes up to you and says, I think you're fat and ugly. I think it's more immoral. I think being nice to people's face, even stopping on the side of the road and helping them with their horses. But then taking any order that someone gives you that results in children dying is worse than if I told Skeeter he's stupid. Like, people like to act like that's so mean. Well, somebody needs to tell Skeeter, the caller, that he's stupid. And
well, if you wanted to do such a thing, and I don't necessarily recommend it, you could go to chat.lrn.fm. It's chat.lrn.fm.
Oh, that's
and that's how you get signed up. And I'm told that it's an incredibly based chat.
I don't know if I'd say that. The victims and survivors of the mass shooting at Robb Elementary School deserve better. Attorney General Merrick Garland said in a statement on Thursday, she's probably part of the same people that gave the orders for them to stand down. You know, they just got to go back and clean up their mess and make themselves look good.
Yeah, I haven't heard a single defense of the way the Uvalde police acted back in 2022 with that elementary school hostage situation. I have never heard anyone say, well, you know, they got to do this or that. I have never heard one defense. It's all been basically, yeah, can't believe it. And the fact that they stopped dads from going in there armed.
And moms.
Yeah, well, I mean, yes, but yes. Anyway, I can only think about the dads. Because my kid was in there, I'd be strapped. I'd go in and, cop telling me no. Are you kidding? You're going to shoot somebody out here to stop people from shooting somebody in there? Are you kidding?
Yep.
So I'd be curious to what the either Uvalde or the whatever county or the state of Texas division of risk management or division of risk and benefit is how it's worded here in New Hampshire. That's the state agency that pays out settlements. I wonder how many settlements have been paid out by the agency that oversees that particular jurisdiction for the damages for the fact that these kids have gotten slaughtered because it was in this gun-free zone and the people who are supposed to protect them didn't protect them. And I can guarantee you that each one of these payouts comes with a non-disclosure. So like here in New Hampshire, according to some I haven't looked this, I'm going off somebody else's word and I believe it, that in like the past decade, and this might be the past decade plus a few years number, that the Division of Risk and Benefit has paid out over $300 million in settlements, basically
why would
New
they
Hampshire
have to pay
DCYF settlements.
Well, what would the cops have to pay for when the Supreme Court has ruled again and again that they have no obligation to protect you?
Well, so this is like, because they'll just settle it for the people to shut up about it.
They may, if they settle it and it has a non-disclosure, I guess there's no way for us to know.
Right.
But I think it's worth people knowing that the police have no obligation to protect you. If they fail to do their job, if they refuse to do their job, if they, stop you from going in and saving your kid, they have no obligation to protect you. The Supreme Court said so time and again.
That's right.
It says the report released on Thursday about this situation in Uvalde, the most comprehensive federal accounting of the police response to the shooting, identifies a vast array of problems from failed communication and leadership to inadequate technology and training that federal officials say contributed to the crisis lasting far longer than it should have. So I wonder what it means by failed communication and leadership. Like, that's just so vague.
It's meant to throw chaff in the air so that the captain or lieutenant or whomever gave the order not to go in doesn't have to get fired.
Yeah, it's called plausible deniability.
The report concluded officers should have immediately breached a classroom to stop the shooting, but instead treated the gunman like a barricaded subject and allowed him to remain in a classroom with victims for more than an hour. The report details the results of the department's critical incident review of the law enforcement response, a review which began days after the shooting at the request of Uvalde's mayor. The police response to the massacre came under intense criticism following reports that law enforcement waited in a hallway for more than an hour while the gunman remained holed up in a classroom and students made panic 911 calls. A U.S. Border Patrol-led tactical team ultimately burst into the classroom and killed the gunman after he had killed a bunch of kids and teachers.
19.
Yeah, and I think 2 teachers, it said. A July 2022 report from Texas lawmakers described an atmosphere of chaos at the scene and concluded that law enforcement failed to prioritize saving the lives of innocent victims over their own safety. Go figure.
I mean, they're just basically a bunch of glorified cowards, most of these guys. When it comes really down to it, they're not going to do anything. This is why they just assume have the drone or the robot go do the job.
I think a lot of these cops, personally, would go in there and they would do something. That's the why I came up with the explanation that it was a captain. I've seen these situations. I worked with law enforcement for many years, and my guess is that they're just following orders, because that's what they do. They just follow orders. That probably the guy who gave the order wasn't even there.
I have noticed with some of these cops that are sort of the bad actors, like in a town I grew up with, and we definitely had a handful of cops that I would say were bad actors. And I knew this because I grew up in the town. These guys were sort of my peers growing up, some of them. And, when that badge was on their chest, they were a tough guy. But when it wasn't, they wouldn't even look at you. I was on a fire department, Bonneville Fire Department, and there was one guy, he really, really wanted to be a cop. And he was a private on a fire department. And as soon as he got a lieutenant position on a fire department, that badge went straight to his head, and he became this arrogant a-hole. And in high school, we played football, and this dude in football, he was like Rudy. He just didn't have it in him. He was a senior in playing on a junior varsity team. And the guy tried hard. And I'm not picking on him, but he also got roughed up, and
was he small?
He got picked. He was just kind of a wimp. He was a little small, but there was one of my other buddies who was 3 inches shorter than him, and probably 30 pounds lighter than him, would just clean his clock, because he was like a rough, tough farm kid. But this dude on the fire department, he actually wanted to become a Palmer cop, and I went right to the chief of police. I'm like, this guy is going to be a liability. Here's what happened with him on the fire department. You don't believe me? Go ask the people on the fire department. And the chief of police, they basically denied him being a cop on the fire department, on the local police department, because I was like, he is going to be a problem for you, because this dude got bullied, and he has an axe to grind with anybody. And he ended up becoming I believe he became a Connecticut state trooper. Wow.
So he went to a different department, basically?
Well, he went from Massachusetts to become a Connecticut state trooper. And, he went to the police academy and all this stuff. But, yeah, and then there's other guys that, they became a lieutenant on the fire department, and they were just the regular cool dude that they were before they were a lieutenant.
Oh, sure.
Yep.
I've seen it go both ways.
Well,
yeah, my opinion is that the vast majority of people who are there just doing a job, it doesn't go to their head. They're not the bad guys or anything like that, but they will follow orders. And sadly, many of history's greatest crimes have been committed by people who are simply following orders.
Yeah, that's for sure. Democide, right? The 120 million people who were executed by government in the past, century.
Yeah, it's true.
It does look like we have a caller on the line, so I'm going to go to David in New Mexico. David, what's in your mind?
Lots of stuff, Bonnie. Duh, it's crazy. And whoever made that lousy trade, Joa for Mark, what happened with that?
Wait, you want Joa back?
That was me.
Yeah, I'll take you both. I want Joa back, but and Mark to stay. So why don't we do that?
Well,
have 4 people on the show, or are you saying kick me off?
We need Bonnie to push the buttons.
You stay too. What?
We need Bonnie to push the buttons.
You calling Bonnie a button pusher? Does she push your buttons?
She's pushed a few.
There's only room for 3 people on this particular show right now.
Oh, baloney. Why do you say that?
Because there's 3 mics.
Oh, yeah. And the Amazon doesn't exist for $19.95. You can get a 4th one. Anyway, now what I called about. What?
We don't have Ian. Ian's the only one that knows how to do anything in the studio.
Oh, that's right. Okay, we're so you have to just keep it the same for the next however long it is. Okay, but not what I called about. I was just joking about that. But earlier in the program, you had a caller talking about Khazaria, and so there's a lot of complicated information, and you're out of time. So let me just leave you with with one simple thing that people, if they're interested, that they might want to look online and do some reading and decide what they think about it. But the term Khazaria, and I'll put this in the form of an allegation, historical allegation that happens to be credible. And there was an area, historically speaking, in the 700 to 800s, plus or minus a couple hundred years, over just to the east of Ukraine on the north sides of the Black and Caspian Seas, referred to as Khazaria back then, has changed to other modern states nowadays. And the allegation is that the king of Khazaria had a lawless people and had a hard time ruling his people, and it was suggested to him by other kings, emperors, like, for instance, out of Russia, that he needs to adopt one uniform religion like Christianity, Islam, or what's the proper name for the Jews?
Judaism.
Judaism. And he decided on Judaism for various critical reasons. And so the allegation is that while there were actual Israelites that were residing in Khazaria, the majority of the Khazarians had no link, zero link to the area known as Israel or to Judaism. But they converted to Judaism, and then they spread up into to Europe, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, and are known as, for instance, Ashkenazi Jews. And then it's the Ashkenazi Jews primarily that instigated, pushed for the formation of the modern state of Israel and to move down there, even though they, technically speaking, had very little to none legitimate connection to Jerusalem, the Mideast, Israel, but they went in and took it anyway. And so there's some food for thought if people have any interest in researching those allegations and studying more on it. Then you might understand better what's going on, because most people have really no awareness of what I just alluded to or laid out.
Yep. So I have some questions. First off, I think that there's something to this, right? Like, they cannot trace Ashkenazi Jews back genetically to Israel. They just can't do it. And you wonder, why can't these Jews name what tribe they're from? In school, when in Christian school, I learned that all the Jews know their tribe. And, none of my friends that are Jewish know any of that stuff. And their statements are, hey, we got kind of mixed up. We don't know anything about, our past, and don't forget the pogroms and all that sort of thing. So all that's true. What's your explanation for Ashkenazi Jews having such a significant IQ deviation from the mean?
Well, it's just, to be crude about it, it's just breeding. I mean, we all, white people in the north have light skin because they needed the sun. Black people have protection from the sun, and curly hair protects from the sun. I mean, it's all because we stay in one place and we breed with one another, so we develop distinct traits. So if the allegation is accurate that people calling themselves Ashkenazi Jews have an higher intelligence, they have bred themselves to end up with a higher intelligence. Congratulations to them.
Well, thank you so much for the call, David. It's interesting, and yeah, if you don't know what he was referring to, somebody at the beginning of the show was bringing up his whole thing about the Jews. 603-283-6160. You can call that number Saturday, or go to freetalklive.com. Also, social.freetalklive is back up, and I think it's chat.freetalklive for the troll chat. Peace.
Hi, I'm Derek J. To me, an activist's calling is to actively work to advance a cause. The cause for which I work is personal freedom. I believe my life is best when I engage in voluntary interactions and self-government. I reject the idea that anyone else has a higher claim to my life or my body than I do. I see people who call themselves the government as a threat to my personal freedom. I realize you may feel differently, but my relationship with the people who call themselves the government is completely